Yeah, I mean, it's just Luke Ford and the dangers of e-personality. And he's an introvert, incel or whatever. And when he comes out on the internet, he has this, like the dark side of his subconscious becomes conscious. I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's what happens. It's what's happening to you on the same way. But your unconscious, your subconscious is different than Gandalf's subconscious.
Logic and science dictate that not only consciousness doesn't exist, consciousness is in fact scientifically impossible. And yes, it is going to involve math and calculus and science and computer programming. I'm sorry. And that have different implications of the process with the connection between the levels of a person's soul and how it reincarnates.
But I'm not going to spurge on the issue because I'm not a woman. It's not my issue.
About how one day you're going to fulfill the Canadian dream or the American dream. So you watch Seinfeld and say, I could do it. I'm going to go out tomorrow and go to work and have a great day, and I'm going to be successful. And one day I'm going to have my own apartment. I'm going to have my own parties with my own friends over, and I'm going to have my own possessions. I'm going to see things that I want and just buy them.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless
be better off
opinion of yours.
Organized week.
In the end, it was an okay thing, but but as I say, the organizers were delightful, and I felt badly in a way that it ended up blowing up for them. But on the other hand, they shouldn't have done what they did.
Okay, so the champ wants to quickly know yes or no.
Hello and welcome to Week in Review with the one and only Doooovid. I'm your host, Church of Entropy. Welcome back to the show. Very happy to be here once again to explore the frontiers of human knowledge and understanding with our friend Doooovid. Over to you for the introductions. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Looking forward to the show.
Okay, great. Good to be back. Hope everyone had a good week. My streaming, all I did this week was the Charles Moskowitz stream. I looked at Politically Provoked for a minute. I guess Norvin was out of town, so I didn't even try to pop on. We might talk about that a little bit, review their JF debate. So not super eventful week, but I did my regular study and stuff that I do. So I'm just preparing my apologize. I'm just preparing my so why don't I go straight in, I guess even before the chant, to the week in review, and I might even share something because I didn't think about what I'm going to chant today. So let me even try to get this ready. Apologize. I was going to stream some chess.
No problemo.
Big chess tournament. Of the Horde variant, but I was going to push off week in review an hour, but it didn't look like it was starting at the time that they said. So maybe we'll put that in the background a little bit as week in review is going on. If it starts at 8,
I don't want to have any copyright issues.
You're not. Chess is uncopyrightable. We discussed that.
Well, that doesn't mean that the channel's presentation of a chess is uncopyrightable. I'm fine with it if you're sure that it's not going to be a problem. We can put it up.
Yeah, you can't copyright chess. So there's thousands of chess streamers that stream chess, and it's I guess a certain amount of freeware or whatever that it's designed. Is my screen share working?
It is working as far as I can tell.
Okay, so here's New York Times article. I actually messaged this to Luke Ford. We'll see if he's interested. New York Times, the Charlottesville case is finally starting this Monday. I guess of the organizers. Richard Spencer, Jason Kessler, and so it's already like over 3-4 years later, but the legal system moves pretty slowly. There's over, I think, 50 defendants, 20 some defendants, maybe more, and there's going to be over 50 expert witnesses. So it could be some of these names are going to be familiar from the Lucas sphere, and it could be some of them are still going to go to prison. I mentioned the SPLC report yesterday, like the chance that Richard Spencer could face prison time for his role in that event, or at least some sort of fine, is still reasonably possible. So we'll probably be following that. That starts tomorrow. So here is, sorry.
eBay Seller Hub.
No, I'm just switching my tab. So here's Peter Santinello. I've been mentioning for a while. He did the Amish. Now he's in Dearborn, Michigan, right near me, talking to Muslims. So he had a dinner with a wide array, diverse group of Muslims. They have kind of conversations like, what's it like to be Muslim in America, and various things. And I think of streaming the difficulty of having a group conversation. But I guess he's pretty good, and he's been invited for there. He's got a big platform, and so they might be best behavior because they want to look good in front of a larger audience. I was watching this earlier today. The Price of Whiteness: Jews, Race, and American Identity. Common issue that comes up. What does it mean to be Jewish? What does it mean to be white? What's the question of identity? And this kind of dual identity, or from American Jews kind of like flexing power, that it's necessary to be, so to say, white in order to flex power, that maybe you could be a merchant and build up wealth or have some sort of influence, but in order to have greater influence, like in terms of civil rights, prepare the world, social justice, being under the label of white is pretty important. There are a few others I'm not sharing that we're talking about Jewishness and whiteness also. And one guy was saying, like, okay, if a person's a black Jew and the person sees that they're wearing a yarmulke, do they necessarily change their opinion about, oh, you're Jewish? I thought you were black, but you're Jewish. And it's the same thing of being white, where the vast majority of people don't necessarily change the opinion of someone that they deem as white because they are Jewish. So here is Politically Provoked. They had JF on this week. Last week they had Destiny versus Sean Last on immigration and demographic change, which was only mediocre. It wasn't really that great of a debate. This wasn't really that great either. It's supposed to be on transhumanism, and they kind of just debated JF's revolutionary phenotype and JF's kind of dire predictions about what might happen if genetic engineering is allowed. So the negative Flowsney, I mean, he had some knowledge, but he didn't really make a passionate argument in favor of transhumanism or genetic engineering. He more tried to like debunk JF's negatives. And he also was on the Saturday Night Pop On, which was kind of uninteresting. Norvin wasn't even there. God forbid need Norvin to make it interesting. I think they had another one on board, Come Entertain Me, so Norvin popped on in the middle of the week. And they didn't even mention the embedded chip. So maybe talk about that, like, what is the current state of embedded chips? When you think of transhumanism, is it only genetic engineering, or is it kind of man becoming the machine with things like embedded chips? And
That's an interesting observation, because they were talking about embedded, I don't know about chips, but embedded, stuff quite a while ago. It's funny that didn't come up. Interesting observation.
I put in the chat, even I was there in the chat, and what's the current state of chips, and would we, there's RFID, remote frequency devices that could sense where a person is, be used as security or some sort of recognition that already exist. And maybe some companies have already went with like the embedded chip, But at this state, security would probably be the main reason why you'd see the chip. You have embedded chips like for like pacemakers or various health devices that help people that have problems, whether you have enhancement chips and kind of people like are dystopian, like why would anyone want a chip? But if they had enhancement chips and people saw that they were successful, there would probably be a longer line of people wanting them. If people had enhancement chips and they worked, I would assume that there would be quite a few people, just like people who get sick need a pacemaker, get the chip. So to say, not really a chip, but a device with a chip in it. That so too, if they had enhancement devices, even if it was only for health reasons, let alone that would give people some sort of advantage, that probably a lot of people would get it. So if that's interesting, we talk about that more.
If they had some sort of problem with their senses, right? Like the time I saw integrated tech working with was somebody who was like colorblind or something, and he had an antenna fixed to his forehead or something. I mean, that is kind of what Elon Musk is going into, but it seems to be at this point at least exclusively medical thing. Maybe that's for the best.
Yeah, so this astonishing hypothesis, I'm sure only has 3 subs, but there are 3 interesting videos on it. Sam Harris talking with Neil Seth, and Neil Seth is making the rounds. Yeah, so the chips right now are basically only used for medical devices for people who have something wrong with them. That's largely exclusively the purpose. It's unclear whether they currently have enhancement chips. I think there are protocol enhancement chips. What type of regulation would they have on it? And saying, as opposed to someone who suffered some sort of injury or sickness and would have the chip in order to function normally, that, so to say, a normal functioning person would have some sort of chip embedded in order that they could have some sort of special function. And I believe that those do exist. I'm not sure the current status, but as of now, you see a lot of embedded medical devices and security devices are coming that would be voluntary, and obviously the dystopian scenario would be forced implants of security devices on all people as opposed to a voluntary one. But that might be interesting to talk about more. There's more Neil Seth on the Institute of Art and Ideas, one of the big names in materialistic consciousness. Found this page, Justin Riddle, Quantum Consciousness, and
was that a Mandelbrot set I saw?
It looks like it said like week in review. Like, it would be better if we were a venue to like kind of reach out and try to talk to these people that may not be applicable or possible. So this guy only has 68 subs, 10 of the videos. He's making videos on microtubules, but not much graphics. So it's kind of him just lecturing and talking, which is less interesting. So they did start. So I'd mentioned the Horde World Championship, so that I'd considered streaming on my channel, and you could see only a handful of people watching. It's not that popular. That's why I thought I'd possibly stream it to try to promote the game. Maybe we'll leave that in the background after I'm done, if Jennifer doesn't have anything to share. These also are interesting. I mentioned the webpage out of Japan, the Neural Correlate of Consciousness. So the slides are free and available online. So maybe we'll look at some of those slides. Stuart Hameroff last week did a podcast, not much graphics, kind of basic, him just more basic explanations, not really anything I hadn't heard before, but I watched anyways. Arjuna had 2 streams this week. He had a conversation between Mark Solms and Michael Eckner, a psychoanalyst and neuropsychologist and a neurosurgeon, talking about consciousness, and both of them largely agreed that consciousness cannot purely derive from the material. So my conversation with Ben Watkins has been indefinitely postponed, but I hope to have him on my channel relatively.
Why has it been indefinitely postponed?
I guess just scheduling difficulties with Arjun. So I told him I have it on my channel, and we'll see. I'll probably eventually talk to him again on Theology Unleashed, but as of now, it's indefinitely postponed. Ryan Mullins, the theologian, talked with the Hare Krishna devotee about the Hare Krishna conception of God. So Mullins has a pretty systematic understanding of theology and metaphysics, so it was a pretty good conversation. Also on the same channel, this was interesting. This, I meant we were talking about laughter and degeneracy, but mentioned like laughing is degenerate because animals do it also. So I guess this reporter was reporting on a bunch of turkeys, and this turkey like bitter in the arse, and then all the turkeys start laughing, and so I thought that was kind of neat. And talk about animal laughter. I've been doing some more research. Show in a second. So here, Eradicate Hate Summit. Here, Tanya Gersh, mentioned the case against Richard Spencer is starting this week for Charlottesville. Tanya Gersh has now rose to someone who tried to escape all this and assimilate into whiteness, so to say, and now is brought back as a leader of fighting hate. And so here's a whole summit with a bunch of various speakers and experts, ADL, even President Bush, former President Bush, gave a speech. So Jennifer had another blog post. So I'm sure we'll hear about that soon. Lex Friedman had on Brian Greene. And I guess Greene is bullish on the ability of science to explain consciousness.
Yeah, I watched part of that. Other stuff sort of piqued my curiosity. Didn't quite finish it, but I was into it for a bit.
You mentioned entropy, quantum gravity, string theory, time, free will, emergence, complexity, Big Bang, extraterrestrial life, space exploration, fear of death. So Brian Greene's one of the biggest names in physics. So I at least watched that in 2-speed. University of Michigan, my alma mater, brought in a big physicist, and this is the Van Klitzing, and he has a constant named after him. And if you see, there's only about 20 some constants, and he is the only living person in the world today with a constant named after him. It's in ohms, and it's electricity. So he talked about the history of canonization. One of the topics I've been mentioning the last few weeks is canonization, and in different ways of measuring things like the original kilogram and meter versus how now where we measure it. So the Van Klitzing constant is related to quantum units per volt in ohms, and I watched at the beginning of the week, so it's a little even difficult to even understand what his constant is used for, and it's related to quantum mechanics. It's interesting, and say that the standardization process and what is truth in terms of units, that if we define relationships between each other and constants, and we'll talk more about math and physics. So it's an interesting video. Encourage people to check that out in my alma mater, University of Michigan. Let me finish these links. So Ralph has been having some debates. He changed the name of his channel to House of Comments, and he's been trying to put up some more kind of mainstream debates. I saw Ralph in the chat on Politically Provoked. So here at the Godword podcast, 625, he calls Doooovid his friend and said he's stepping his game up, quoting the scholarship. I've been in his chat, telling him to step his game up. So he quoted me and he called me his friend Doooovid and said he's stepping his game up and quoting the scholarship. This was the guy I got into an argument like the like Doooovid hating Jew who on Politically Provoked was like teaming up with the Nazis against
Oh, you're
Doooovid.
gonna double down on the 20-year-old you're trolling. All right, then that's good optics.
I don't know. I would even have him a week in review and try to have a friendly conversation. So it's just ironic
Sure.
that this guy was the most negative against me. Maybe it's not ironic. But
well, if you understand psychology and how rivalries work, I think it becomes less ironic. But even when stuff's not ironic, it's still a bit, I don't want to say shocking, but unexpected.
Yeah, I guess it is probably expected. Like, so most of the Jews who see me arguing with counter-Semites, you're kind of against me. And so they released the full video of the Marone disaster. And I guess they had closed circuit video when they did the investigation they released. So we covered stampedes. And I guess there's two different points where like mass death happened. If that's interesting, I can't even share the link, but it's pretty tragic. And you could largely see exactly what happened. So I mentioned last week I had some, in terms of algebra and geometry, where algebra is like the spiritual realm and geometry like the spiritual realm, the material realm. And then the history of algebra, where completing the square was already understood in ancient time, but they didn't have a abstract way of using symbols. So they had kind of formulas, recipes that were in words that say, if you did this, do that, and even geometric ways. So, if you remember, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, and you want to convert that into some form of a plus x something squared plus e equals 0 to complete the square. And the trick, if you remember, is to add b divided by 2a to both sides, or an e, and there's even a geometric solution. So if you see here, ax x squared plus bx plus b divided by 2 squared equals x plus b divided by 2 squared. That's completing the square. And then from there, you could solve for x and get the quadratic formula. So just the common quadratic formula people know, or the recipe. In order to do it by hand, you have to complete the square. And the trick to doing that is adding another constant that is b divided by 2a. And so I mentioned for like over 1,000 years, one of the biggest problems in algebra was the cubic equation and then the quadratic equation. And the cubic equation was solved already like 700 years ago. If you have ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equals 0, mentioned Galois theory, Galois in the fundamental theory of algebra, which says that you have a unique solution, the number of solutions for the power that x is raised to. So if you have a cubic equation of ax cubed, then you have 3 different solutions, as would be seen on a graph. Although before Descartes and the thought of graphing it and then looking for the 0 from a graphical solution hadn't really been thought of, and it was largely these recipes for solving it. In order to solve these, they had to come up with a way to, so say, complete the square, complete the cube, and by putting in the substitution factor. And there's various methods, and they're complicated. And then you see a solution here with like similar to the quadratic equation, like c equals the cube root of negative q divided by 2 plus the square root of q squared plus 4 plus p cubed divided by 27, that you have solutions for the cubic equation. There's actually a few different ones, and it's similar method to completing the square that is relatively simple to figure out, as opposed to the cubic took hundreds of years for the greatest mathematicians to figure out a method. And then you have the quadratic equation, ax to the fourth plus bx cubed plus cx squared plus dx plus e equals 0. And there's also a solution to that. And it has these very complicated substitutions, but eventually you have, so to say, an answer, x equals b divided by 4a plus or minus, in a very complicated formula. And even these things here in the formula stand for other things, and there's multiple solutions, but the quadratic and the cubic have solutions, and that was probably the greatest problem that mathematicians worked on. And then I think Euler comes up with a proof that the quintic can't be solved, that there isn't an algebraic solution to the quintic equation. And I mentioned Galois a few times now. God forbid Galois was killed in a duel, and part of this theory he wrote in a letter to his friend the night before the duel. And so one of the great minds in the canonization of algebra. So here's the chess series. I think it's a 10-game match, first through 5.5. And Ray Holt versus Cinnamon from Canada and Poland, vying for a chance to compete against the world champion. And I'm like top 30 at this variant. I've played both of these guys many, many games. They both beat me about 4 out of 5 games. I get occasional games off of them, but they both get me about 4 out of 5 times. So maybe I'll leave that in the background unless Jennifer. Oh, so the last thing, I was going to do a chant. So I mentioned last week that in Bangladesh that they ransacked and killed a Hare Krishna devotee, and the Bangladesh government really hasn't done anything about it. And so ISKCON has been arranging Harinam Sankirtans all over the world in protest of the Bangladesh treatment of Hindus. And Lord Chaitanya came from Bengal and is in the region, from the region that now is under Muslim control. The Chaitanya Charitamrita scripture is written in Bengali. I have it, translated into English, and so they had a big Harinam and chanting in front of Starbucks, same place I used to chant. And as I mentioned, that Satyagraha, the Gandhi's movement of non-violent resistance, passive resistance, is probably a derivative of Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtan. Even Gandhi himself, when they did the Satyagraha, usually chanted bhajans. So maybe I'll chant here for a second along with their chanting. I didn't really prepare a chant or in the mood so much. So let me just chant. Krishna, Krishna, Hare, Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare, Hare. So you can see that they're holding signs of the Hare Krishna mantra, and in these signs, so it's kind of interesting. God cares about minorities too, and so I guess in Bangladesh, Hindus are a minority to Muslims. This was on Sabbath, otherwise I probably would have joined them. And I know almost all the people in this video chanted with them. So with that, if you don't have a screen share, maybe I'll leave the chess on in the background, unless you want to do a screen share for yourself.
Well, if I do a screen share, you can still screen share that. I can just alternate.
Okay, so yeah, I was going to do live commentary to the chess match, and I follow this pretty regularly. But yeah, so with that, that's my week in review, and a little chant in solidarity, worldwide solidarity. Pretty bad. Hindu temple was ransacked, and the priest of the temple was literally lynched, killed, martyred. Um, so pretty serious. And so let me show also some of these books I'm reading. I'm still reading more in Leibniz. I'm reading this book on the history of the golden ratio. So it's like a history of mathematics, but through tracing thoughts on the golden ratio, which I guess is 1 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2. But there's actually hundreds of different ways of deriving it, like Pythagorean's theorem. And it was well known in ancient times till modern times. And I started reading, in with neurology uh, on the ear. So I've been doing a lot on sound. So I've been doing more on the ear, and they have all these review on the brain. So here's a textbook of neuroscience. Now, I mentioned this many times. Look for this cutout of the eye, and I actually took university anatomy and saw this. So for example, here's your eyes, and then the optic nerve switches sides, and the optic nerve largely leads back to the back of the brain. And so like the connection with vision and audio, but the vision is the single largest portion of the brain. About 20% of the brain is related to vision perception. So I have these two books here I've been going through on just textbooks on sense perception, mostly vision. And so I started looking into audio. I have another book, a collection of papers on emotions, quality, and consciousness. And from a historic perspective, emotion was thought to be a function of the brain. So now even emotion is very difficult to understand. We have like the connection between emotion and facial expressions, or emotion in the part of the brain, or the so to say the animal brain, the reptilian brain, and emotion. But emotion is still widely not understood, and also say historically was thought to be a function of the soul. And in Kabbalistic Vedic systems till today, I think most people would hold that that emotion is still part of the soul. It might have physical correlates to it, but so he was looking at some of the book. There's a collection of essays of the historical, Aristotle till present, and then the most recent thoughts on the materials view of the origin of emotions from a purely materialistic perspective.
Great. Thanks for sharing. I had to refresh the video, so I'm just working with that right now. It seems to have slowed down a bit, so I'll get on with my weekend review as soon as I can confirm that. Yeah, it looks like it's frozen a bit, so I'll just let it wait. So in the meantime, see if I can pull up. It might be what you might not be able to share that. It might be too much for the computer. So we'll see.
Which one, my chest one?
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to be hard. It's hard to handle it.
Okay, so should I just stop doing screen share, or it's
maybe for now, and we'll see if we can pick it back up later.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
You.
There's no reason. No one here follows the chess, so it doesn't matter. I'll be watching it in the background, and if anyone does want to see the Horde Chess World Championship, I'll put it in the chat. And then if you want to look at some of these neural correlative consciousness slides, also I still have these here. So we probably won't look at these this week, but I'll message to you. So
we could look at them if you want to. That's interesting to me. If you want to do that right now, for whatever reason, I'm having trouble getting my thing to work. But
well, I'm not sure why that would be any different than the chess, the screen share on that.
Oh, it's not the chess that messed up. It's YouTube that froze, and for some reason, it just really doesn't want to stop playing the video. So we'll see what that's all about. Let's see here. I just got to pause it. There we go. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Nice to see regular commenters, Mark Kelly, Effluent, Mr. Hugh White, Male, Don Willis, Project Sigma, the other Carl, who says the debate from JF was interesting. I do like the ideas of eliminating certain diseases, but not the cost of creating synthetic humans. Yeah, I didn't catch it. I'm basically bored of the revolutionary phenotype and everything to do with evolution, basically, ever since what happened with my dumpster fire debate there. I would say they were, Mark couldn't have done a better job debating me, but the overall audience reaction wasn't great, so probably not gonna indulge in too many of those. Because now I've found my home on the T-Jump server. What fun. To always have predictable shenanigans on the T-Jump server. So I did put the link if people want to join in the description, but don't join if you get offended, because it's pretty offensive place. It can be. It's a comedy server, I think, first and foremost, so, and I don't want to derail it from that, so I'm kind of cool to get into the, I don't want to say, whatever, just going with the flow. I like, roughhousing, is that the word? There you go. So I am just working on finding, apparently I've deleted every single link I have in this image here, so let's see if I can. And here's a guy who's big on the server, teach like some, I don't know much about this guy, Canadian Catholic, and he got Lawrence Krauss on the server, but I missed that, so. And play a bit of that, and I queued it up to an interesting part, because he actually says some pretty pertinent things about GR.
It's this famous thing about centrifugal or centripetal motion. If
I'm
you're
not seeing anything.
going in a circle, you can always define yourself
I'm
at
playing
rest,
it.
but you'll experience a fictitious force pushing you outward. And that's fine. So in that frame of reference, you're at rest and there's a force pushing you outward. So, but general relativity says you're free to create any coordinate system you want, and the laws of physics are independent of what coordinate system you determine yourself in. And moreover, locally, you can always define a flat coordinate system in where you are, even if space is curved on large scales. But
anyway, I don't know a lot about this guy. I don't know much about Lawrence Krauss, so it's the first time I saw him, actually. But it turns out he works at the same university as Dr. Stuart Hamroth.
Locally, you can define a coordinate system with x, y, and z being perpendicular, and
so anyways, basically saying that GR, I don't know how much people are actually able to hear that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay,
That's basically saying that GR is implies that the laws of physics are coordinate system independent, and that we can extrapolate flat space-time on a small enough scale. It's like, is that actually true? Do we want to invoke that, or is that viciously circular reasoning? Oh, it is viciously circular, because that thing disproves that categorically, that at all scales, space-time's entangled. So, bit of a weird situation, but haven't seen this whole thing yet, but Arwell did put out I like to check those out, because seems to be going in a non-terrible direction with regards to philosophical inquiry. Can't comment too much because I haven't really seen it. And once again, things frozen. So here we go. Woohoo! I only just recently heard about this Collatz conjecture, which seems to have some connection with the measurement limit, because not my last blog post, but the one before that has some stuff in it talking about how my thing and Thad's thing made, like the quantum periodic table versus his hyperbolic great whatever thing complement, might actually represent the same. Well, I'm fairly convinced it represents the same core information because it's both used to be the measurement limit, but like, does it actually have even more in common, structural attributes, even more so than just purely this informational 3+1? And so maybe this Collatz conjecture is some other type of 3+1, because it would appear that the 1 is infinite. So you could have infinity many 3+1s where the 1's infinite, basically in every case. So we went over this to some extent, didn't we, Doooovid? Collatz conjecture already on the show. Or am I misremembered that?
Well, we might have mentioned. I'm not sure how much we
3n plus 1.
Well, I mean, you're always going over that. But...
Okay, 3+1 being the measurement limit, and the Collatz conjecture is not the same thing. The Collatz conjecture is the most elementary, perhaps the most elementary unsolved problem in math. Claims that for all positive integers n, the map n to n over 2, and n to 3, if n is even, n goes to n over 2, so it becomes divided by 2, and if n is odd, then it goes to 3n plus 1. And this, apparently that this series reaches 1 after a finite number of iterations. So I can't say for sure, but that may be another manifestation of the measurement limit. But the Collatz conjecture, and we have not established already that or conclusively that Thad's thing are in any way connected to the quantum periodic table. It is still speculative at this point, but nevertheless interesting. This came out this month. Anything cosmological I like to look at, but a lot of this is not well understood, so we want to big old grain of salt with this one. But there have been quite a few people coming out of Central America that have been doing quite a lot of promising, interesting work. So this was one of them. I suppose I should share this link in the chat like Doooovid does. Tough to multitask here. Mr. Whitebale says, Collatz is bullshit. I agree with the statistical idea. It just tends to decline. Well, apparently Collatz has some correspondence with Brownian motion, which would appear to be, like, I know a lot of people don't like this unfalsifiable word, but if you don't like that word, undeniable, right? So your own reactions to conjectures like this, if they haven't been falsified, i.e. proven false, well, doors still open that they be true, right? So something like Gödel's shit completeness shitty shit has been conclusively disproven against a reasonable axiom, aka something I said, right? Because it's always reasonable to listen to what I say and never reasonable to not. That's been disproven, right? But some stuff sort of sticks around, and classic conjecture is one of these things. I was pretty much only impressed by the diagram in this one, because this is essentially what's happening. I mean, they haven't quite, I don't know that they've made the leap to say that, well, the exclusion event is because of quantum state crowding. I don't know if we're at that point yet, but the geometry seems less insane than a lot of stuff I've seen. Let's be real. All right. See what else I've got here from last week. We went over everything. So there's a question. We're having a lot of debates in the T-Jump Discord server. A lot of fun there. There's a question like, if we can't agree on basic things, right? Like if people can't agree that causality is an axiom of science, there's no conversation to be had. If you can't agree,
I showed you that last week. It isn't. I mean, so that originally
basic. Well, exactly. But if you're gonna take issue with that.
Physics.
If you're taking issue with that, you're on the level of brain in a jar. I deny that premise. That's a waste of time for me to acknowledge arguments like that, because if you have to take the argument outside of the universe to be feasible or conceivable or plausible, I don't much care for the argument. So that's a point that just needs to be made.
I shared the link from Yale yesterday about...
Doesn't matter what someone said. It's a matter of definitional necessity that science ceases to make sense if you get rid of causality. I'm not saying a straw man definition of causality. I'm saying the axiomatic cause effect. That's why science is
unclear whether causality ever was an axiom of it. You're saying you're talking about relationships and defining relationships.
Right, sure.
Just like physics, force equals ma.
You want to deny and you want to tear Vestal Virgin down to whore? Is that what you want to do?
And I'm not sure what you're talking about. But
Well,
I
that's to
think
me what is it equivalent to say that science isn't undergirded by causality? Because science isn't the only thing undergirded by causality, Doovid. Lots of
I
stuff
don't
is.
think it is. I
Everything
mean,
is in
I
traditional
don't
knowledge
think
systems.
I don't think that causality is a fundamental. You could have science without causality, and it's unclear
No, you can't.
whether science doesn't
So
actually
that's an
describe
assertion with no
causality.
evidence. It's not true. And I don't know why you'd want to be pushing back on what I'm saying in the middle of my weekend review. It's not a debate, open debate time. So one of the things that's very important to agree on is basic facts. And if people can't agree on that, fine. But they are allergic to actually agreeing on something. So just forget about agreeing and forget about actually making your point because they're going to deny causality. Well, that denies that you could ever make sense of anything. Sense making requires causality. So if you deny basic things like that, we measure galaxies, we infer galaxies to be receding at FTL speeds, okay, based on emission spectroscopy. If you deny results like that, you're not living in what you call consensus reality. And for the people who are so into arguing pro consensus reality, it's actually quite mind-boggling that it could then switch to what could only perhaps be described as gaslighting, where it's like, well, no, it hasn't been established the galaxies are receding faster than speed of light. It's like, okay, well, I thought this authority was accepted. Is it accepted or not? Because it seems like a lot of times people want to have it both ways, which is what happened most recently. Like everything basically just generated to pure confrontation, and then there was a bunch of people trying to like destroy my reputation, and it's like 2017 called. It wants its rhetorical strategy back. It's like this has been kind of done before. So, just saying. Might be time to try a nicer strategy at this point. I don't remember why I brought this up, but this is going to be important somehow. I need to look into this a little bit more. So another thing I'm working on is just finding the set of equivalence relations, because people are so obsessed with this identity law, which is obviously nonsensical. There's like 10 ways things can be equal. So then to draw them into all single thing, can you see how that might be an issue? Maybe? Good. Because it's definitely an issue. Because it reduces the eigenspace from 10 to 1 of what you can possibly think. So that's not a great plan. We want the space of what we think to be optimized, not maximum, not minimized, but optimized for its canonical space. I saw this posted recently. Interesting type of art. Hadn't really seen a whole lot of art like this. It kind of reminds me of Where the Wild Things Are. Do you remember that kid's book? Where the kid like goes to sleep and then wakes up in a monster land? Doovid? No?
Not sure.
No? You don't remember it? Oh, I'm sure if you saw it, you'd remember it. Anyway, it reminded me of that art, but I haven't seen it a lot. Hey, Deborius, nice to see you. Effluent. Anyone else I missed? Yeah. Let me know what you think about the art in the comments. I was pretty impressed by it. It seemed different, better than other forms of art I had seen to that point. You mentioned the Redbird constant. It does sort of ring a bell, but I actually don't remember either what the significance of this thing is. Seems to be. I'm kind of curious if this is one of the predictions of Thad's model. Have to check it out. Like, you understand at least that like Thad's model is theoretically predicting the values of the constants in nature?
I read and saw that he said that, but I wasn't sure if he's really.
It's hard to
doing what he
validate,
claims
right?
to do.
How do you validate it? It's like, I don't understand the math, right? And like, I tried to get him to explain to me, but I did get a little bit of the way through it, but it was not to the point where I could sort of follow it end to end. It would be awesome if it's right, though, wouldn't it? It's just, yeah. How could either of us know?
Sure. I'm not sure if he's really saying anything. I mean, just say that you could derive numbers from anything, and then say that that his numbers predict the fundamental constants of the universe is quite a stretch. They're just saying that all, because it's likely that his, so to say, model, even if you want to call it a model, could simply derive any number. And so just the fact that his numbers could derive some of these fundamental constants was was unclear. So whether it's more than just a I don't want to call like a mental game.
You also mentioned Galois theory. Never heard of that.
Galois.
Okay.
Maybe it's Galois. I mean, it's French, so it could be that the.
Yeah, if it's French, it would be Évariste Galois. Almost
Galois.
Gaudois, but not, because Gaudois as a U.
There's the fundamental theory of calculus. I mean, of algebra, and which basically says that ax squared plus bx squared plus cx, however high the largest polynomial is the number of unique solutions to it.
Huh.
And he's also got something about group theory, another theory that Galois, and it's a little bit more complicated, like what group theory, number theory are. But in terms that most people have heard of Galois, just because I guess we call the fundamental theory of algebra. In algebra, my mom, I think even my mom had algebra in high school. She may not remember it, but just the concept that however many unknowns however big the highest exponential is going to be the number of unique solutions to it when you set it equal to 0. And if you graph it,
go ahead.
If you graph it, usually, like on a simple graph, you could usually see it more clearly. That if you're just, if we wanted to get more in depth, we can review. Maybe we do more like Wolfram or putting in equations. You want me to screen share a Wolfram?
Sure.
Okay, so let me click on a screen share and new link. So let's just do Wolfram alpha. And I think, just y equals x. And if you see, it crosses the y-axis one time. So there's one unique solution. If you set y equal to 0, there would only be one solution. If you made it like 2x plus 7 or something, there's going to be, 2x plus 7, there's going to be only one unique solution. But if you made it y equals 2x squared plus 7x plus 3, then you would see there's two solutions. So when you set y equal to 0, there's two different solutions when it crosses the y-axis, and so on. That if I made it yx plus 3 plus 7x squared plus 3x plus 8, then you would see that there's going to be 3, or maybe here I don't have 3 unique solutions, but you see there's 3 turning points that would be largely lead to unique solutions. It could be because it doesn't cross the x-axis, that there would be.
They're called stationary points.
So here you see it crosses it crosses the x-axis, the y-axis 3 times, and so on. You make this to the 4th and to the 3rd, and so to actually get it to cross the axis, but that there would be, if it doesn't cross the axis, it probably means that there's imaginary solutions. So in this case, there would still be 4 solutions, but they'd be 2 of them would be imaginary. But you could see the I guess the stationary points or the turning points where the derivative would equal 0. So there'd be 3 different points of the derivative, And if you made it, more kind of like to the 8th power or something like that, that there would be 8 of these points. And so here I just, for example, I'll set this equal to 0, 2x to the 8th plus 7x cubed, 0 to the 8th. And so here you see that there is 7 or 8. I only have 7 solutions listed here. So it has 2 real solutions and then 5 imaginary solutions. I guess there's supposed to be 8, but if you completed it, so I'm not sure if it just says straight up that there's always the exact number, but that's the essential fundamental theorem of algebra. And I mentioned the most long worked on problem of algebra was the quintic. Probably for about 1,000 years, people tried to solve the quintic until someone eventually came up with an equation for the solution to the quintic. And then it took another 1,000 years for another 400 years for someone to solve the quadratic, like the quadratic formula, where there's just a formula that you could plug the numbers A, B, C, D, E into and get a solution. And then Euler eventually showed that there wouldn't be a solution to the quintic or higher, similar to Fermat's last theorem. So, well, are you done with your
Are you
weekend
done
review?
screen sharing? No, I'm
I
not
think-
done
yeah,
with my
so-
weekend review, but you wanted to interject and talk about something.
Well, you asked me to, so I just showed the fundamental
Did
theorem
I?
of algebra.
No, you asked me if you could interject. I don't think I asked you. I was just in the middle of doing my weekend review. Disgusting, vile cunts on Discord. I'll forget everything that's happened if you can behave yourselves, which includes do not fucking undermine my authority, do not undermine my authority, do not undermine my authority, and do not undermine my authority. If you don't understand something, you say it. I don't understand that. Have fun with your dumbness. If you dare speak on my authority, what you're doing is you're confusing people who really have no clue what's going on. That's cruel. That's extremely cruel. To think that your egotistical, disgusting reactions matter compared to what people who don't really have access to much education stand to learn from me. So frankly, how dare anybody be that selfish? It's repulsive. So I'll forget the whole thing because I know people make mistakes and are stupid, but don't think I don't have my finger on the pulse of this. And if it continues to go in a way that I don't enjoy, aka not respect my boundaries, if I say I don't accept the premise of the Socratic method, that's it. If I say everything I don't like is the Socratic method, I'm afraid. That's how it works. So have fun with that. Have a lot of fun with that if you don't like it. Some good news is that it's very easy to impose order. And the reason that order isn't happening is because there's no leadership and there's no expectations. So everybody's just doing whatever. And the bottom feeders and the rats are swarming and et cetera, et cetera. Again, turn the behavior around, be respectful, hold a good space, keep the commons tidy. Won't have any problem for me. Can be quite forgiving, but keep coming back at me. Whoa. It's not going to go good for the commons, is it? I've got a link to my Discord, which isn't really socially anything. It's just a repertoire of pictures and stuff for now and links. But eventually, it'll be fun to have something going on there once there's enough people. But for the time being, I'm just building up other servers, which is a lot of fun. Also making some axioms. Yay! So how are we going to solve the axiom problem? Right axioms. We have to know what the right axioms are. And then from that, you're pretty much set. You can frame any problem. But if we keep doubling down on the wrong axioms, which would appear that, has the Banach-Tarski paradox been solved? To me, it really doesn't appear that it has. Correct me if I'm wrong. It would appear to disprove the notion that there can be correspondence between physical causality and mathematical interpretations thereof. Yeah, Lawrence Krauss interview, to come back to that quickly. He said Harvard had cultural effeteness that MIT didn't have. I was like, oh my God, Kitty can scratch. I was literally blown away that somebody would say that about, I don't know if he actually went to it. Maybe it was one of those like rivalry things, but oof, you know? So that'll be a lot of fun. I'll eventually, write about this, but I haven't quite figured it all out. And I got to kind of go through and actually do a problem myself, because the idea is to figure out like when does it make sense to say, yeah, we can do calculus now, because we can't presuppose that we could do calculus. There are circumstances where calculus is like totally good to go, best approximation technique, right? Be silly to deny that for where it applies. It's awesome. The question is, where does it apply? And then there's a metaphysical framing that happens before that. And if we fail to do that, we end up sounding like certain cackheads that can't substantiate anything and run around in gangs on Discord trying to disrupt literally any conversation that doesn't sound like. So anyway, welcome, memes. Nice to see you. And that's about my week. So I like the quote from Moral Outrage Prophet: the cosmic axiom of the flesh doesn't care if you agree it's happening. Very nice. Yeah. Lots of different axioms we could presuppose. And it's a question of, well, are they the most reasonable ones? And that's where the conversation has to really open up. And yeah, another thing that didn't get mentioned yet is the dodging of the question of authority. Okay, I get it. Everybody's a slavish devotion to authority. I'm no different. It just needs to be acknowledged. That's all. Now, the whole looking things up, right? There are certain things you just can't Google. And that's where philosophy comes in. So that's about all I had to say. Oh, and there was one last thing I wanted to say about, it does to do with Platonism. So I don't know if you want to, yeah, never mind. Is there something you want to talk about in particular? Did you say you had slides you wanted to go over?
No, I just the random slides that were from the neural correlates of science. They're more educational. I didn't prepare them or look at them in advance, so probably not worth it today, at least. I'm
Not
still watching
worth-
this chess match. I'll probably be done in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just think it's hilarious that, like, back in the day, you'd have to walk around from town to town and talk to different people. But now you can just stay in one place on the internet and different people will come and talk to you. And there's no way they can throw literal garbage at you. I mean, they can throw other kinds of garbage at you. Reputational garbage. But then you just make a rule that's against the rules server, right? Because everything goes well until traditional authority could be undermined. Then it's just a disaster because there's no order. But there's a bunch of people who get a kick out of just causing, rabble rousing. Isn't that the way it always is? You're a manager, Doovid. I'm sure you know all about that. How do you deal with conflict? You said mostly just avoid it, right?
Yeah, so management, you largely focus on results. So if conflict to the larger, greater interest, and if you're in management, it's largely about getting paid or the completion of a project. If it's called to some sort of greater cause, like a construction project. So there's the element of behave or don't get paid, combined with some sort of obvious understanding that people cooperating, working together is necessary for, so to say, the completion of the product. So, getting people to look at the bigger picture. And if you're talking like educationally, like, chess coaching, or then your kids or the law, then it's trying to get people to understand the consequence of their actions. So, God forbid, so you're going to get on the wrong side of the law, or informing people of, so to say, what what the consequences of these actions, legally could be, which, would include things like jail time, or, my dad is a doctor or something like that, informing people of, the permanent injuries that people could face from fighting, or that, the type things, reminding people about, God forbid, like permanent injuries, that health consequences to bad action. And, in that sense, so if you can't compel a person, there's the love, and then there's the fear aspect. And the love aspect is like, okay, you got to set aside whatever is causing you to be in this conflict for the bigger purpose. And then there's the fear action, that like, you really don't want to escalate this. You're going to end up, God forbid, in jail, the hospital, or dead. Or if it's not like a physical thing, you're going to end up losing your friends or failure. So if I was like, okay, Jennifer's too confrontational in her, demeanor and talking with other people, so just warn her about her own impending failure, or ability to build up long-term relationships, or find people willing to stream with you, like saying you can't talk to people like that, you can't be so
Yeah,
mean.
nobody ever wanted a fixer in the history of mankind.
Well, it's be in terms of, so to say, the impending consequences of behaving like that. And then you could even do it, like I said, The Godfather, make you a deal you can't refuse. But I looked that up, so I guess in The Godfather, I think that's actually in a few of them. That line was so popular that they used it in a few. But that's, God forbid, where they put like the horse's head in the Hollywood producers. Like, the guy wants to get into a Hollywood movie, and they end up like, physical threat, and God forbid, like beheading their horse and sticking it in his bed or something, disastrous. But the value proposition, just, I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse, not in terms of a threat of physical violence, but in terms of acknowledging your own best interest, and framing something in terms of your own best interest, that you're certain to say yes. Like, I know how much money you make, or I know the circles that you're trying to get in on, or that, I know you have a hard time meeting women, or whatever it is a person desires. So to say, the carrot and stick method. So dangling carrots of saying it's in your best interest to cooperate.
So that would be your approach. Carrot and stick management.
Well, that's classical for management. So if a
Yeah.
person's more friendly, if you're, because sometimes you can't avoid conflict. So you're saying you have to escalate conflict, or threaten to escalate conflict. Like, it's okay, like, I'm sorry, like, we're just gonna have to fight to the death if you insist on behaving like this. And so your action is going to lead to either, the death of you or the death of me. If it's like memes, and the dueling aspect, that they say like, this behavior can't go on. If you insist that this behavior goes on, we're going to have to declare a
Yeah,
duel.
but if you're a manager at a job, that doesn't get said, does it?
I've seen managers that host fights, like boxing. If you're like a construction site, you say just fight it out. And even I've been in work environments where everyone is like taking a break, and they've had a fight. Not like where police would be called, but it's like, okay, we can't have this conflict. You guys got to fight it out, and everyone kind of stand around and cheer. So like a duel to the death would be less likely, but it'd be conceivable. Saying like, look, work has to go on. If you guys insist on carrying out this conflict, just fight it out and get it over with. And even if that means that one of you got to die, God forbid. That's the theory of dueling. It's meant to increase productivity and solve. So usually you don't
Sounds like
want
you've
to.
never been a manager then.
Well, I've done management many times. I'm saying, God forbid, I've seen many fights like that within friendly environments where, no, I'm saying when you have all men, even women, like things resorting to violence is not necessarily uncommon like that, and controlled in a type way where the manager would be there, and even in school, saying like the rules of the playground. Saying like you can't insult the guy's mother. If you insult the guy's mother, according to the rules of the playground, he has a right to hit you, and so it could be escalation from there, and like a sense of the rules of the playground.
So it sounds
Yeah.
like you've never been a manager before.
Um,
Because resolving stuff with violence just really doesn't sound like something a manager would do, unless they were the leader of a prison gang.
no, I'm saying that I have been a manager, and I have worked for a lot of other people, and I have factually seen managers encourage people to fight it out, and saying like like
Even
no,
if that's true, if that's your first go-to solution to conflict, is that right?
Well, I'm not saying the first go-to, but I'm saying if the conflict's inevitable, to just say we got to get back to work. You guys got to work together, or one of you's got to go.
Okay,
And
sure.
in a fight is really the most logical way.
Even though there'd be a lawsuit in 10 seconds. So it just
No,
seems insane to even say that
No, I
and
mean,
expect me to buy that.
There's not really lawsuits and saying you need witnesses and saying that, like these would be the type thing.
Yeah, there's no lawsuits. People aren't
Well-
litigious at all, especially Americans.
Well, I mean, there is such a thing as lawsuit. But you're talking about scenarios where everyone knows there's a conflict between the two parties, and the fight is, so to say, inevitable. That everyone would gather around and watch the fight.
Inevitable.
I don't know if
I
anyone in
think
the
we have a
chat-
different definition of that term, but that's
Am I the only one in the chat who's seen that? Like in New York, even in Jewish school, I saw that. Even like in nonviolent Jewish
are
school.
fights breaking out at my places of work? But no.
Well,
I
if you had
don't
your-
think it's ever happened. It's happened at a bar once that I had to break up a fight, and that took about 20 seconds,
Well, because I worked in management. You didn't
including
work
the
in
lead
management.
up to the fight.
I was saying, like, I worked in construction, and the type people who work in these jobs used to like, no, like only a fight is going to resolve it, and actually you build respect among your employers, so to say, by hosting a public fight.
Okay, so it's management, right? I got you now.
Well, I mean, it's conflict resolution in the sense to say, it's a duel and only one person could go on, and if that's so to say, the only way to resolve it is to have a fight. So that as the manager, that might be what you have to do.
Well, in my experience, violence has not been an option on any job site I've ever been at.
But I mean,
So
let's say
I have to work out some alternate means of conflict resolution where, to me, violence isn't even on the table.
Let's just come to a clear. You've never done physical labor. You've never.
I have done physical labor.
You're talking about you've worked on a job site of physical labor, and you say violence wouldn't have been. I mean, like just watch Roadstar or something. Like how many times do you see employees fighting at like Burger King or at the drugstore?
I have not worked on a construction site. I will be clear that I did not work on a construction site. So
even
I'll
like
grant
a restaurant
you that.
or at a store.
I've worked at. Let me think if I've worked at a restaurant. Does a nightclub count? I think they had nuts. Just kidding. No, I never worked at a restaurant. So would a fight break out there? Yeah, fights broke out at the bar. I seem to recall that.
But even that,
I'm saying like most of the time you didn't have violence. You just had a de-escalation if there's an issue.
Yeah, but I don't know if anyone in the chat is saying, but like, no, I would say, in non-intellectual fields, most places of employment, you'll see a fight every few months, even especially if you have a large employment. If you're talking a restaurant, any form of unskilled labor, that you're likely to see regular violence, and not just in terms like memes. If you're the bouncer dealing with like security, but internally between staff, and you might see it randomly break out. So if it's at a restaurant or a construction field where one person just starts hitting another person due to ongoing conflict, but you might see a manager that would just say, okay, we're going to settle this right now, and everyone gather around and watch the fight, and then after the fight you say it's over, and you're saying you had your chance, that was the fight, it's over, and saying that's how men solve things. It's saying like it wouldn't be a police thing; it would be usually some sort of agreement that both sides are mutually agreeing to a fight. They're not going to contact the police, and even there's legal methods. There, I mean, you look on YouTube, there's fight clubs, so to say, like that resolve disputes and contact both parties and have them agree to like a refereed fight to resolve the dispute. And so, I mean, human nature is human nature. So I said, no, unquestionably. I've seen hundreds of fights in my life. I've seen even at intellectual, like insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, salespeople, stockbrokers. Um, you might also see fights like that. I remember, like stockbrokers at his office, they used to have regular fights like that at his stockbroker's office, where two people would be in a dispute, and then during lunch, everyone would go outside and watch them bash each other's heads in until so to say, the dispute, was resolved in that way. And it's a pretty good method to, so to say, of limiting personality conflict. Saying like like the expression, what would it be like if everyone had a gun? It would be the most polite and respectful. Like the subway ride. If everyone had a gun, it would be extremely polite and respectful. And in the same way that say if you're the rules of the playground and someone teases you, you have the right to challenge them to a fight where um, they can't be punished. So to say, like it's cheating to say I get to tease you, but if you
Yeah.
challenge, if you beat me
Yep.
up, then you're the one who gets into trouble because I was
That's true.
just teasing you. So it's kind of like the rule of the playground is that you have to be able to resolve personality conflicts, usually by violence, and even women. Probably also is like them. You just
I
watch
had a fight with a woman once. A woman like punched me right in the face, Doovid, like right in the face in a bar. Don't you want to know why?
I mean, if you want, I mean, I haven't really been in a fight in over really 20 years. I had one minor altercation here in Metro Detroit, and it was relatively minor. In New York, um, I really didn't get fights in New York. I saw a lot of fights. I was in a lot of places where there was fights, and especially I was in bars in New York, and even in like Hasidic Orthodox Jews, I see fights
Okay, so what was the
semi-regularly.
minor altercation, please?
Here in Metro Detroit,
With you, was it what, mild shoving? Like, how far did it get?
I hit somebody, and it was over disrespecting my Bible.
What
But
did
it was
they do?
minor, and I don't really want to talk about it
Okay,
that
that's
much.
cool.
But I mean, because the person's still around, and
No,
it
no
get
problem.
escalated,
No, I understand. Yeah,
and,
don't even worry about it.
and I mean, no, because God forbid, this guy's a pretty dangerous guy. He probably's got guns, and he's got guys, and just talking about it would be likely to escalate it. In terms like, yeah, you want to hype up and escalate fights, but saying like, no, I mean, fights are to end something. Like if you're in management, the purpose of a fight
I don't
is the
know.
finality. Is saying if you're trying to promote something like hyping it up, you want to, or just like if Jennifer has bad character, she just wants to promote conflict for her own perceived
That is
benefit.
false.
But
I
saying
want
from
to impose
management,
order and find people a way to channel their aggression healthily. I do not seek to cause conflict, but I understand people are conflicted, so I seek to push it to the beginning of the interaction and then move on in a nice and self-improvement tastic way. Okay? Don't love conflict. I love the chill Chat.
I mean, there's a legality of some. Obviously, you could, just because people agree to it doesn't mean that there can't be arrest or being sued. And at a certain point, sometimes the cops are there too. The system is corrupt, and God forbid, I had a friend who used to get in fights, as even betting fights as a kid. People would gather in kind of like that John Claude Van Damme movie, name slipping me, but where they bet on fights, and the police were there. I mean, so a certain level of corruption, and but at some point you say the conflict is inevitable, and a fight is the only finality to it. And so if you're in management, you say like, you two have to work together. You have to squash this conflict. I don't know what's causing this beef between you two.
Could it
I
be
don't
blood
care
sport?
what's blood sport.
You can thank my husband for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually French. That movie, there's quite a bit of French in that movie. But yeah, I think that's part of management, and especially like if you're dealing, like you're in physics and you're a department doing like sound analysis, it's unlikely. But you're certainly at a construction site, and even food service.
Sound analysis. Wow, make it sound so exciting.
I would say on a construction site, you might be likely to see a fight every few months on average. You might fire people, like the type management using like a fight as management might be rare. Although if you're the management that's hanging out at the bar with your employees, as opposed to on the site, so saying if it's the employees and it's an off work venue, or if it's on site, saying if you're working with expensive equipment that could injure people, you need people to have safety, and to say like, I don't care about your beef, I don't care what's between you two, like you have to do the work according to safety guidelines, and then to have like a sanctioned workplace fight in order to squash the beef. I'm not sure, saying like, no, I've been in management. I think I've done that myself a few times, encourage people to just fight it out. I mean, not in a long time, but I've seen that done tens, maybe even hundreds of times, God forbid. And the world's an unfriendly place, and so I'm more a best interest, or telling people, the repercussion for their actions. So the best way is just to inform people the repercussions of their actions. But beyond that, there is there is just a recognition of the harsh realities of the world and the utility of violence.
I wanted to still talk about the non-violent conflict resolutions due to, somewhat limited to zero utility of such things in a place like Discord.
Because that's why I say most conflict is caused by women. Because the natural method to
You keep coming back to this a lot. Tell me more.
Because Jennifer doesn't see that she increases violence, increases conflict, and then you would kind of walk it back, like, oh, you're not going to hit a girl, and saying that by increasing conflict, you're trying to insulting people, when so men would resolve that through violence, but because it's a woman that's doing it, you wouldn't resolve it that way. Generally, the majority of men, or especially men with self-control, wouldn't resolve it that way.
There was definitely a guy in high school who wanted to beat me up.
You're saying he didn't because he didn't because he had a moral code and compass, or he didn't because he was scared that if he beat you up, some guy would beat him up? Or,
my guess is that his main fear was like losing a conflict to me, because there's that many chance, even though you're a fucking giant jock blankety blanker from Blanktown, I might actually get one off on you and win that fight. And you don't want to take that chance, Mr. Blankman. You really don't. And
Well,
I think
say
that was more on
likely
his
that,
radar at the time.
or more likely that some good do-gooder would beat him up on your behalf. That even if you got,
I never allowed such things to. I don't
it
know.
wouldn't matter. Saying it would happen. That just
At the time, I had way too much pride to let somebody else defend my honor. Let's put it that way.
But I say at a different point, that it's saying that if a guy beats up a girl, God forbid, that would, so to say, leave him open to a good do-gooder who would avenge your honor. That it would be it may not even be in front of you, may not even know about it, and it may not even be someone who knows you. Could even could be just a random do-gooder that so, no, I mean, that's a pretty common thing, and that's why I mentioned that women increase violence. That there's
I am capable of imposing orders, so I agree that yeah, a lot of conflict is either started by or exacerbated by women, but I think my intention shows is clearly what I want to do is impose order, not chaos.
Well, I say if there weren't women around, there wouldn't be someone like you to increase conflict. Because you're dealing with men, you increase conflict because you're just trying to get ahead, and you're trying to act maybe like men, or whatever, how you perceive men to act. If you're a woman in a largely, but men who have their own code of honor that has nothing to do with you, their code of honor, might be, like God forbid, if someone beat up a Jew, and say like you can't beat up a Jew and get away with it. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if the Jew was at fault. Someone's got to do something about it, and there would be like that with a woman. Someone would have a code that would be like, you can't hit a woman. I don't care if she was at fault. You don't hit a woman. And because you did that, even though I've never had any beef with you, if you watch World Star like that, or internet violence, a lot of times they even directly say that. So there'll be a guy hitting a girl.
I never expected him to clock me, but he did say it out loud, which is like, don't show emotion in public if you want to be seen as hard.
Well, that's why I said you act in a way that you break the code of the playground, but because you're a woman, you get away with it. But it's really you who breaks the code of the playground. And
I don't know about that. I feel like I'm the only one with upholding any type of principled approach.
Well, I mean, you're very mean to people.
Aww.
You insult people's honor in such a way that you would expect.
That's true. I do retaliate when people insult my honor. Thanks for noticing.
But in a way that you would expect violence, that your level of insult to people, it would not be surprising if someone acted in return of violence to you. God forbid. But saying because you're a woman, you're saying that would be less. And so, okay, even though it wouldn't surprise. I mean, okay, because you're just a streamer. If you acted in public like this, like, okay, if you were at a bar or at a place where violence,
I have a posse in public. I don't go out in public without a posse who is basically, I don't want to say apologists for me, but yeah.
Well, I mean, bodyguards, straight like that. Mean to say, okay, there's thousands of people who would like to beat the hell out of me, but it would probably cost them their life. It's not that there's not thousands of people that don't dream of smashing my head in. It's that they know it would probably cost them their life. And saying even if they somehow were able to get a hold of me in public with no backup and were able to beat the hell out of me, they would probably spend time in prison. And so, but it doesn't mean, the fact that there's not like a whole bunch of people, that there's nothing they'd rather do than beat the hell out of me. So if you're saying like you're good at violence, you travel with security, so to say.
Well, I don't know if I go that far. It's not like I'm making friends with people anticipating somebody throwing a punch at me, but it's like, you are not gonna you're not going to aggress my shit. If you met me in public, I'm sorry, but this is one thing just hearing me, but being in my presence is something different. So you'd probably have to see it to believe it, to some extent, perhaps. Trust me, these problems I have imposing order on the internet, I don't have them in real life. I'll say that much.
Well, I'm saying that no, you can't impose order. That, I mean, women.
You can't speak for yourself.
Women think they could impose order. That's why they cause conflict. But it's like, no, you can't impose order. And the natural reaction to someone trying to impose their will upon them is rebellion and even violence. So that's when you have women in management. So if it's a man in management, like people you can't really force people to do things that they don't want. Women, maybe through God forbid, like threatening to withhold sex or something like that, or childbearing, uh, think that they could impose order, but factually, said like no, most people recognize you can't impose order, and that's why women increase conflict because of this fantasy of theirs that they could impose order.
Mm.
And saying you can't impose order, you could have a posse and scare people, but like no, I mean people, like I said, like they're, even though I don't impose order, but saying all the people who
My posse doesn't scare people. That's my whole thing. Like they're a bunch of friendly, super awesome, cool people.
who impose order.
I am the bringer of order. They are merely my backup to ensure that nobody gets the stupid fucking idea that they can aggress me in any way, shape, or form, or, as I said, undermine my awesome super
How do you impose order?
I could teach you that, Doovid, but that would require you to accept my authority and several other things that are never going to happen. So,
Yeah,
but trust me, it can
accept
be done.
anyone's authority.
Proof of concept.
I'm saying, like I would revolt him if you tried to impose order on me. I would revolt, and saying if you got to a point, I would my only choice was violence or accepting your order. I would probably choose violence. And even I'm your friends with you. I don't accept order from. I don't let anyone impose anything on me. Like I'm a free man.
Okay.
The
people voting no, you're voting against yourself. You do realize that, just saying. And what's up with my chat right now? I don't know, Lambie. People have trouble with concept of authority because it's not often explicitly stated that there's an appeal to authority being made in the decision process. So there's always some appeal to authority. And this is the conversation I spent probably 4.5 hours on Discord. Absolutely horrible. It was horrible. Very horrible what happened in that conversation. Really, the only point to be made was heart solipsism can't be proven false. Therefore, it's just a fact in some sense, but it's unclear what it means. And the way to get past it is appeal to authority of some kind. Okay? That doesn't mean I want people accepting my authority. I don't know how many times I have to say that. It's the concept of authority. See, Doovid's saying that no matter what the authority is, he's going to rebel against it. That's a principle. It's like, okay, you have a principle of rebellion. Okay.
Well, a principle of what I call retaining my freedom and autonomy.
That's an illusion, but cool.
And so, okay, like I'm a slave to God, but not to any other man. And, like, no, I reject your authority.
I think we know that.
I violently reject your authority.
Authority and order aren't the same.
Well, I mean, what does order mean?
Order means creating a culture where the expectation is a certain level of adherence to predefined protocols. That's order. Authority is what do you accept as the thing that gives you the green light for how you act.
I had pretty serious security. Like I was in New York, and like I
understand. I mean, I'm glad you did because you're still here today.
Yeah, but thank God. I was a Hasidic Jew, and I mean, God forbid, I was even involved in like cocaine dealing and party promoting. God forbid, but like I had serious security. Like I had dudes that were like physically imposing, big, like tall and muscle. I had guys that trained with the Gracies. I had people spent time in prison. And I didn't have much, relatively, like to New York, it wasn't much violence. And I remember I lived in Manhattan, and there would be the dissonance of a fight on the street or at the bar and people waiting for the cops to come. It was like, the cops aren't going to come. Like New York, cops don't come. Like Detroit, cops don't come. In my neighborhood, cops come. Like at least in my residential neighborhood, cops come like in a minute or something. But they're not bars here. It's not. But in Manhattan, look out the window. I lived place you could see out the window in a crowded corner where there's bars, and there was basically fights every night, and most of the fights the cops never came. Even 10, 15 minutes. If the cops came, it'd be like 10, 15 minutes. Like unless it happened to be a cop there. But like for the cops to come in New York, take like 10, 15 minutes. And then even by the time the cops come, what are really the cops going to do? And then also to say prevention. You're saying, I know what the cops are going to do in the protocol. Tell a person exactly what the cops are going to do. And that's part of de-escalation of conflict, or knowing the results and saying, okay, memes is a bouncer, knowing what you can and can't do, and how you could get sued. God forbid. And it could be where you lived, it wasn't like that. It's saying like, okay, you didn't live in, you're a country girl with a high IQ, you didn't live in New York, and saying you might have been the person with the dissonance who just be thinking that the cops are going to come and saying like, you're stupid, the cops aren't coming. But that's somewhat of experience. Okay, like, okay, I grew up in like the rules of the playground. If you tattled, or you came from a protective environment where there were eyes on you, but like no one really cared about me. My parents were workaholics. I went to a public school with blacks and Arabs, and most fights were not interceded in by teachers. Most fights, the adults or authorities never became aware of them, and usually, God forbid, snitches get stitches. You don't want to tell because you're going to get beat up more, and the person's going to make a point of showing you that the authority structure isn't really going to help you. But that's dependent on time and place. That's very possible that you were in a place where there was a strong authority structure, and that yes, like there was somebody to break up fights, there was some sort of system where people who acted like that would have been outed and would have been removed.
Why do you think I had the posse? Because they were like, hey,
right,
this
where you hanging
person
out
will do this for us, and we don't have to bear the burden of what it means to impose order. All we have to do is stand by this person's side, and she'll do everything else.
Outsource violence.
They're outsourcing order, and I'm outsourcing wonderful friends.
Well, so if you're outsourcing violence, and that's a dangerous field also, and say, okay, violence is necessary.
I'm going out looking for a fight, so it's a mere defensive, protective, good sense measure. Nothing more. Not cruising for a fucking bruise in here.
But you've preemptively outsourced violence.
Yeah, because I know how jealous people can get due to something experience.
Well, I mean, you don't even have to apply a negative. You say that the world's a violent place, and not necessarily because people are jealous, but people are violent, and you need to be prepared. And one of the things you need to be prepared for is violence. And so the best way is to have someone who's very good at violence part of your posse. But God forbid, there's a lot of people good at violence. Like, so in Detroit, literally like 25% of adult males are former felons. And if you're in New York at a club past 1 o'clock, probably half of the people there are extremely good at violence. And you could try to have your crew or posse, but like, no, I mean, you can never be the best at violence. You can't.
That's because violence isn't what imposes order.
But I don't know what you mean impose it. We're saying it's part of the. If you mean order in terms of like hierarchy of humanity, or you're talking like a natural order that of the cycle of birth and death, that's saying violence is part of the order. It's not, you can't impose.
You know what chaos is? The opposite of that.
What does that have to do with you and imposing it? You're saying there's order, and whether there was you or not, there would be order. What is it? Who is this you, and what is the type order that you impose?
I believe I answered that earlier. Had to do with adherence to protocols and tidying up the commons.
You have protocols, and if people don't adhere to those protocols, you impose to ensure that the people, even if they don't want to adhere to those protocols?
Well, I have my own protocols that I have for myself. Now, that's my own personal morality. That has nothing to do with anybody else other than me holding myself to a super high standard. To then expect other people to rise to that standard, that's like the midwit error, where it's like, why aren't you convinced by the exact same arguments as me? It's like, no. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is a minimum moral standard. I hate to quote you know who, but once you hold yourself to a high enough standard morally, it is possible to impose minimum moral standards. They won't be anything like your own standards for yourself, but they will be sufficient to raise up the rising tide lifts all boats type thing. Because it's a cultural shift where essentially, actually, I learned this from, and I was just ranting even this week about how I hadn't learned anything in this life, only to remember that indeed I have learned something in this life from a guy named Mike Maloney. This is the guy that I first tutored for, and he had just a great strategy of rewarding good behavior and more or less ignoring bad behavior, which obviously I can't do that. So I would say it's super complicated. Other thing, asterisk in the Matrix, but that mostly try to go with that. And he just kind of had the Santa Claus vibe. I love that guy. He said people, all you got to do is incentivize good behavior. So yeah, I try to live by that maxim. And sometimes people make that impossible. This is just more or less about identifying those people. It's a multi-pronged approach, but yeah, it's definitely doable. That's doable. Haven't gotten to my death clock voices yet, but that's in the future at some point. Can't wait.
Yeah, so generally,
that make it clear a little bit. I've imposed order in places before, but obviously it takes time. So it just depends what the project is, more or less, to see how long it would take before I got to a point where it was a well-oiled machine. In some sense.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid. You demonstrate my point that most conflict is caused by women, and in the tendency of women to want to impose their will upon.
Yeah, others. I'm just like every other woman. That's true. I was just thinking that.
And then that resulting in violence, and in terms of women in management, it's like. I don't know, God, it's like memes. I don't think memes would be that kind of guy, but possibly where it'd be a scenario where you have the woman saying this is the way it's going to be, and then you have your goons, and then your goons.
I really don't think they'd want to be called that.
But that's what they are.
No, I didn't select them for their signs. They just happen to be gorgeous specimens.
Right, so you have your goons, and
I reject that label. They are not goons.
That's what they do. So,
no, it's not.
You might think that it's you that imposes the order, but no, you just have goons that beat people up for you.
No one ever beat anybody up. It's the size of the group, because you're taking on the group at once. Nobody's going to do that. Therefore, there's never any conflict. Preventative measures.
Well, and so if you own a bar or something like that, you take on a group. You're saying that like the castle doctrine.
I'm saying that if somebody attacked me, they'd be not just attacking me, but everybody in my group who was already more or less, I don't want to say trained, but yeah. Let's just say it never happened.
Well, because you're an introvert and you're hardly ever around people. You're not like.
Well, I would go out quite a bit. It was fun to go out. I mean. I wouldn't say like that I don't enjoy combos.
I'm saying you're a country girl. I'm saying Doooovid promoted parties in Manhattan for like a decade.
Yeah, there were some parties in Ottawa that weren't terrible, okay?
Yeah, I'm saying like, okay, I'm sure there's fights in Ottawa. I'm saying there's fights in the country also. But it's saying like, you're somewhat typical.
You realize that even if it's a bunch of geeky, wimpy, losery guys, that no one's taken on a group of people at once.
Depends how good you are at violence.
Oh, it depends a little bit on demeanor, doesn't it? As in, whoa, that person is scary looking. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Right, and saying it also depends on, the person's honor. That usually there's a loss of rationality when a person, resorts to violence. That their rational functioning has been decreased, and the consequence of their action is has been diminished. So like people like you saw you see people fight right in front of the cops, like the rationality
Okay.
point of you're going to get arrested. The cops are here. That many times people continue the fighting because that rational long-term planning has, just like,
I don't
back
know.
when
We just like play fight and stuff.
I
So
remember I went to like summer camp, and there was this dude. Like, if you said something about his mom, like he attacked you, and like we were young, maybe like 12 or something, and like quite a few of us, tested that, and it didn't matter if the counselors were around. If you said something about his mom, he would attack you in front of the counselors also. There's a certain function of
you don't think I can mediate conflict?
Well, I mean, conflict isn't mediate. You could attempt to mediate conflict. So saying on management, so if it's the castle doctrine,
The thing is, I think like the problems that are
I mean,
caused
women.
by
That's why I
women,
say women increase
who
conflict
is
by
going to
thinking
solve them if not a woman?
What I'm saying, you mediate conflict by, by God forbid having, by marrying or having relations with the person in conflict. But like, you're not going to do that, or you can't do that with everyone.
Okay, yeah, always looking at self says everyone has a plan till they're punched in the face. Yeah, everyone's a motivational speaker till the real one shows up. I never told the story about me getting punched in the face. Have I told it to you before, too?
No, I mean, if you want, you can for your audience.
Yeah. Well, it happened in a bar because somebody was smoking and then they weren't supposed to because it used to be legal, but then they made it illegal. And I'd snuck my sister into the bar with a fake ID, so I didn't want her to be subjected to the smoke. So I tattled on the guy that was smoking to the bouncer. I guess it got him in trouble. I think at some point he might have thrown a drink on me. I might have also done the same to him. I can't remember the exact details. It's not sober. And then a girl just punched me in the face because I guess she was his like henchman or something. And I remember thinking it really didn't hurt that much. And I just started laughing because it was rather hilarious that it didn't hurt that much. And, had anyone ever been scared of such a thing happening, it would be rather silly. And that's the end of the story, and nothing happened after that. And then I was super hard. Oh, there was one last thing. I was super hard in the bathroom, which was key to it not happening again. Which was, she kind of realized that she was, way off the leash or whatever. And I just, didn't let it get, I didn't accept the apology, basically, as in, I'm not going to say anything, but this better be the last time type thing. Hey, Ariel. That's my story. So that's pretty much the only time it ever came to blows that I can recall. Definitely broken up a bunch of fights too, so I really don't know what you're talking about that I can't impose order. And those fights, I don't think I started any of those fights. I mean, yeah, sure, men have fought over me before, but who hasn't had men fight over them before?
It's environment. Maybe say, okay, like a good Orthodox Jewish girl who did what she was told, but like, no, they've never had a man fight over. Like if you had stayed in Catholic school and never misbehaved.
Well, if men want to fight over me, that's on them. It's arrogant of me to get in the way of that, isn't it?
No, I'm saying that you have to be in a bad circumstance. That you have to be in a place of violence. Like my rabbi used to say, bad things only happen to people when they're where they shouldn't, when they where they don't belong. And so saying you had a tendency to be where you don't belong, that maybe you have seen these things, but okay, you went to a bar, and bar you shouldn't have been in a bar in the first place, or so on and so on.
Well, I did sneak my sister in with my ID, so I was definitely taking.
I'm saying that I mean, your story is you're saying like I mean, really, it's your own stupidity.
Stupidity or awesomeness.
Well, I mean, even that you would try to defend your own stupidity is, God forbid, but that.
Yeah, you're right. It was. I should have just.
I mean, you
never experienced anything.
You snuck your sister into a place she shouldn't have been. You lied and cheated to do that, and then
Cheated.
you tried to protect her, from things where she shouldn't be there. You're like, hey, you shouldn't behave like this because my sister's
Well, it
there.
was
What tells
illegal. It's not because my sister was there. It was because it was illegal. It's not like I would be like playing that card of like, oh my god, do what I said for my sister is asthmatic or whatever. No,
I'm saying you caused a fight trying to prevent behavior.
I caused a fight
because
to myself.
because you
I'm the one who
because
got
you
punched in the face.
because you purposely brought your sister where she wasn't supposed to be, and say like, no, I mean, my rabbi's right. Like, like generally 99+% of the time, bad things only happen to people when they're where they don't belong, and almost all the fights I saw were at parties, at places of people just hanging out. A lot of times, there were substances being used. Like there were an occasional time, like I saw fights in synagogue, but it was relatively pretty rare. And
We
even
would
those
just do
times,
feats of strength sometimes for fun. We would never fight with each other. That's unheard of.
but it's like on the playground when you're younger, there's a lot of fights on the playground. That's part of what the play, fighting to some extent is one of the things kids do on the playground. But yeah, at the bar, at the disco, at the club, at the concert, saying we had season tickets, a kid to the Palace, to the stadium, there was always fights. There was always multiple, most concerts, even like a Pistons game. There wasn't a fight every single Pistons game, but there were fights every once in a while. At rock and roll, heavy metal concerts, there were usually multiple fights, and some, like a Pantera concert or something, an extreme concert, there might be tens of fights, and so it's largely, they say, yeah, bad things mostly happen to people when they're where they don't belong. And so if you're talking about a fight on like a construction site, like in management, where it's saying, okay, like, no, like I'm not like Jennifer. I don't just pick on people for no reason. I don't try to impose things or get people to do what they don't want to.
There's the world's smallest violin playing for the person who sent a woman to punch me in the face. Poor him. He had to put out his cigarette.
I mean, like, you don't want to be here, you don't have to be there. Like, remind people in synagogue, like, or at events, like, you don't like, it's voluntary, like a chess club or something, like you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. Like this is the chess club, this is the synagogue. If you came to fight, you came to the wrong place. Suggest you find someplace else to go. Versus, I mean, really, even the fight I got, almost like was trying to stop the chess club from reverting into a gambling hall, and really that was dispute, and then to be in a place. Eventually, I gave up on the chess club because I saw I couldn't stop it being reverted into a gambling hall, and that was largely the will of the owners and management. And so, so to say, my home court advantage disappeared because the home court was to have it be a hall of gambling. But you say, like, you don't have to be here, and so, like, I didn't have to be there, so I just stopped going there, and avoided conflict. But
are you saying that because I used a fake ID, therefore I just
because
have
you
to
were where you weren't
allow the law to be trounced by half?
I'm not going to use the word deserved. I'm saying people don't. The HIMSA principle: no one ever deserves pain, but action, reaction, karma. You were where you didn't belong. You brought your sister to where she didn't belong. You lied, and then you picked conflict.
That's a
with another
I think.
person while you were at a place where you didn't belong. So, I mean, the conflict isn't surprising. I mean, saying, like, no, I mean, I would definitely wouldn't use the word deserve, but saying the human animal, the conflict's not surprising. I'm not surprised that happened, and I would even say you caused it upon yourself largely, not to exonerate the other person for escalating to violence or proving it, but they say, no, I mean, from what you said of the story, you basically caused it on yourself. You caused it by being there in the first place.
So because I was illegally in a place, I can't appeal to other laws. You realize how psychotic of reasoning that is?
What did you try to?
That's like saying that because a princess went to the bathroom, she's not a princess anymore. Well, actually.
What happened after you got punched?
I told you
don't
I
get-
was ultra hard in the bathroom, which probably stopped future conflicts to a large extent, as I basically snarled at the woman who was attempting to console me, who had earlier punched me, to attempt to, well, I suppose she was trying to see if there was going to be any, bad consequences. So
She was worried that
I
you were
explained
okay
this
after
earlier.
she hit you. So you
No,
didn't
she was
after-
worried that there would be a negative consequence for her. I guarantee she couldn't give two fucks how I was doing, and I acknowledged that she didn't give a fuck, and I said as much, and that's what I mean when I said I looked hard, which probably prevented some future horse shit from manifesting at all. Yippee! So imposing order is mainly about rep, which is hard because you got to always maintain it to some extent.
And people's will is free. You can't impose on other people's actions. You could try to give
I mean,
consequences.
yes, of course.
But it was, and then there's the, and saying when I was talking about using violence at a construction site, you're saying that people may not like me. Is saying if I'm the manager, they want to get paid. They don't like me. They don't like the way I'm doing it. Saying okay, they're here voluntarily. They don't have to work for me. They could choose to leave. That the person would be likely to be violent with me, maybe to steal something. Even that, I'm very careful, or something that someone thought they're going to rob me or something, but saying if there's two people that are supposed to be working and they can't work because there's conflict with each other, that they're saying, I don't know, you don't want to get in necessarily the middle. It doesn't really matter. Like you're saying, like they're there to work, they're there not to be in conflict with each other. And if working orders, like no talking, like you're here to work, you're not here to talk with each other. Like when I'm paying and you're working for me, you don't talk to each other. So I mean, you think you could avoid conflict like that, or saying that's basically impossible, and people are working, and then whatever reason they're going to have conflict with each other, that you would be in a situation that you would resolve it through just fight it out and then get back to work, or just or what you that be some sort of, and if it's at the club or something like that, where God forbid that bad things usually only happen to people when they're where they don't belong, and then it's like memes and the dueling, where we're saying we have
the woman who punched me was one of the biggest cunts in the entire town, and she scared even some of the guys. And the fact that I didn't get scared of her put her a little bit, down. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not. Probably not.
I mean, you're not Christian. You didn't forgive her. You still bear grudge, or you still trying to?
I don't think I've ever had a grudge against anybody that wasn't a pragmatic remembering this person's a sack of crap who's going to betray me in the first possible opportunity. Make a note in their file. But yeah, I wanted to add one more funny bit. I got a huge black eye after that fight because it was literally over in 2 seconds. It was just like punch, laughing maniacally because it didn't really hurt that much, and I was about to punch back for shits and giggles, and then it just got broke up before that, and then it turned black. My eye got a black eye like 2 days later. It was super weird. And someone in class was like, oh. It was just the only thing I remember. But I was like, God damn it, I never want this to happen again. But yeah, it was a totally isolated thing.
Well, because you stopped acting like you learned your lesson, and stop paddling on people,
no,
or
I think honestly, I was only
you
19.
stopped going to places where you didn't belong, so to say.
No. I stopped being defiant.
You're saying that's the last fight that you lost, or you're saying that's the last
time I had to worry about being undermined by plebs? IRL for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was 19. I mean, who knows what they're doing at 19?
Well, you always have to worry about being undermined by violent people.
Well, that's a constant risk, but I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about order. There's really almost no connection. Like, violence is just, like you say, inevitable. Order is nothing to do with violence, other than that sometimes violence is inevitable, and you want that done in an orderly manner as well. It almost doesn't even bear warrant to mention.
Like the rules of the jungle are part of order, saying there's law and order in terms like, okay, so there's crime and punishment, but so to say there's the rules of the jungle that if you call someone the N-word, he's probably going to hit you. If you attack, make fun of someone's mother, he might hit you. that's, so to say, the rules of the jungle, not necessarily the rules of law and order. I mean, it could be if you call someone the N-word and you get beat up, maybe the police will help you, maybe they won't. Could be you make someone fun of someone's mother and they beat you up.
The point is, you never want to get punched in the face, but if you do get punched in the face, you want to relax your whole body. I mean, at best,
that's part of the greater order.
You're going dead weight. Dead weight. If you can dead weight fast enough, you will. Yeah, but most people.
So you want to absorb. You want to absorb.
Dead weighting's more than absorbing, but yeah, at the time, all I could really do is just basically dead weight my neck muscles.
Or if your neck is more relaxed.
If your neck's, but the thing is, like it's where
so
there. Where's
it going to be?
Where's the torsion going to be applied? Where's the torsion going to be applied? Obviously, the absorber for the torsion. What is it? Abs. So wherever the torsion is applied, it's going back to abs. So that's why you just keep the whole thing. Ideally, as you're sensing it, you're falling. You're letting your legs go. Was this bar fight what triggered Jen to only roll with a goon squad? No, I would have been rolling. And first of all, I reject the premise because they're not goons. They're just people who are interested in the same stuff as me, who probably after hanging around with me for a while have like perfect looking bodies or whatever, but and could be qualified to characterized like, Greek god-esque looks or whatever, but they're not goons. Goons is like someone you pay, $25 an hour, carry a gun on your behalf. I don't pay. So they can't be goons for not paying, right?
I mean, usually goons in the way that people that don't, so to say, merit on their own.
The truth is that I was their effing goon. They would bring me to a place with somebody they didn't fucking like because they knew I was literally that predictable that I would just stomp that person, and they just chuckled themselves like, "Ooh, I've hacked the Gen bot." It's like, you can just fucking ask me. But this is this is the times we live in, isn't it?
Goons are basically there for violence and saying that they don't merit on their own behalf to be part of the crowd, that they don't necessarily bring something, either they don't have their own money, or they're not accomplished in whatever way that makes them interesting to be at the party. They're there in case violence happens. So that's their main function of the entourage. And so to say, the goon squad, that so if you're party promoting or something and say, okay, like usually I go solo because I don't need backup, I'm not expecting violence. But if it's a case where I'm expecting violence,
you're never alone when you have a penis.
Well, no, I mean, that's part of me. Usually, most Doooovid, 95% of the time rolls by myself. Like in New York, I didn't roll by I still rolled by myself probably like half the time. But if it was a more public event or there's more chaos, more unpredictable, or even know that there's going to be people there that probably don't like me very much, then you have to look at the security concern. So it's like memes or something. You want someone who's just like beefy, like visually scary, that may or may not be a good fighter, but just looks bulky and would visually be some sort of you don't really want to mess with this person. Is more
like Hodor. Sorry.
Well, probably more like memes. That a lot of times people are good at fighting don't look physically imposing. So you could have someone who was.
You think memes is good at fighting? I don't, because he's always talking about.
I'm saying, I guess he's not. I'm saying he's.
People who have a facility with violence don't talk about it a lot because they don't even want to give people the idea that they're going to engage in it.
Well, no, I'm saying people that's what they do. They talk about it. People like who fight. That's what they do. That's what they talk about. But I was saying like memes and saying he's a jock, so to say. He's a gym guy, security. He's got a lot of muscle. He looks big, and but in fact, if you're in your entourage, like if you're P. Diddy or something, you're famous. You'll have famous fighters in your entourage. It wouldn't just be, like some guy. Unassuming, you would have someone like a former MMA fighter, or a boxer, or someone that people have even heard of.
I wish you could have seen me when I go to the dance clubs and just throw down on the dance floor. That was impressive.
If you're in high school, it'd be like that with the guy on the wrestling team. You're saying like, well, why is that guy part of your entourage? You say, oh, like everyone, it's a high school. He's on the wrestling team. You know what he does.
I just hung out with all the quote band geeks. That's a large group. No one's taking on an entire group. I don't care how dorky individually. Maybe
I mean, so if it's like the Goon
which they
Squad,
weren't even all. Some of them were actually kind of cute.
I say it's like the Goon Squad saying like it's a like it's a band meetup, and this guy doesn't even play an instrument. This guy this guy doesn't even play an instrument. Like he's on the wrestling team. What's he doing here?
Tickle Pink just said P. Doooovid.
He's a goon. I'm saying that's but I mean.
Doooovid, I'm the fucking goon. Don't you understand? Because I'm a woman, I can get away with saying shit. They can't. They bring me in. I predict.
No, I'm saying you're just
I always say. Nobody has any recourse, and they're just sitting there chuckling. I'm the fucking goon in this story.
No, I mean, God forbid you just demonstrate. I mean, it's supposed to say the country girl for high IQ.
It's inconceivable for you that I operate this way. I understand that. That's cool.
No, I'm saying, so you're just the country girl for high IQ. You don't know what you're talking about, and you demonstrate it to anybody who's listening. It's like, no, and goons usually, they've been in fights, lots of them, and people have seen it. Like it's not talk, it's not, it's not like talking trash. It's like, like you promoted parties for a few years, and there's been fights, and the people have seen this guy fight multiple times. They know what he's there for. They know what he does. It's not a question in anybody's mind. It's not just some stupid woman talking trash because she doesn't know any better. It's saying like, we know what this guy does, and there's many people who have seen him do it. And maybe some of the people there have had it done to them a few times, and because that's what people do. So if you're in a party scene, there's going to be multiple people there that are basically violent. That's what they do, and people are familiar with it. And if it's in a place where there's police, that might even if you're talking at a club in Detroit, where probably there's a lot of felons, and there's a lot of people who spent time in prison. And like this guy, like you're saying, like no, this guy's my bodyguard, and he killed people, and he just got out of prison, or you didn't hear what happened, like that guy got beat up so badly, he was permanently injured, and this guy went to prison for 4 years, and now he's out, and he's back to being my bodyguard again. So you don't watch BMF, like Detroit now is in the big TV show Black Family Mafia in Detroit. Parties, clubs are usually quite violent, and it's usually quite clear. It's in the people just running their mouth, and
surrounded by.
And God forbid, like your only
really
story,
like what the person running their mouth.
Only story that you have is about getting beat up. The only story you had to tell is the one time you got beat up.
I've got other stories. I told you about the time that I dunked that professor into the water on the day before I got the job posting for my RCMP job that I later got.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but
I've told that story as well. When I had a head-on collision with a professor in the pool at school, and I dunked him just for a second. So Lambie's asking if my goon squad was a bunch of shitty flu geeks. Lambie, honestly, I just don't go out alone. So it's not a fucking goon squad. It's just not wanting to go out alone.
I'm saying have you seen?
And yes, over the years, I have a fucking gang of people who are hard because I don't want to hang around on hard people. Sorry.
And they've beat people up right in front of you many times.
No, because we are too intimidating to approach. That's the whole point. Is preventative aggression.
The thing is, I think people aren't scared. I'm saying people who are violent aren't scared of losing. They're saying that it doesn't matter how strong and intimidating you are. There's always going to be someone who's going to try.
There's other things to fear than physical violence.
But I'm saying, like, you don't really have a goon squad. You're saying they didn't beat people up for you constantly. You haven't seen it didn't happen for you regularly.
If they were beating people up for me constantly, I wouldn't be much of a leader, would I?
Well, it depends where you're leading. If you're in a violent place where fights are regular, you're saying like your goon squad. They're tried and tested.
That's the thing. I'm not going to test them, and I'm not going to try them. But when push comes to shove, I know they'll do what I say, and that's all that matters.
I promoted concerts, parties in Manhattan.
All right.
There were fights. Like, there's no way you promoted parties in Manhattan. There weren't fights. I mean, that's just the part of the business. You have to have security. Memes, if he does security working at bars, like bars have security.
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
he does do that. So he probably has a facility with violence.
Well, maybe not. I'm saying he doesn't sound like it that much. And it's
Well,
like
he said he
just,
was a bouncer.
yeah, I mean,
So
the
sort of-
bouncer has, it depends on, you know, the level or the type stuff you're bouncing from. But it's like that,
I guess
like,
being a
no,
bouncer doesn't really do much for unarmed combat,
I'm
does
saying
it?
your talk isn't impressing me. I mean, not that it, I mean, say if you be more impressed, like you've never been in a fight, you oppose violence, but like you're trying to sound tough. You're saying like if you had a goon squad, um, there would
I'm
have been people who
trying
tested
to
you. There
sound
would have been
tough.
people who
I'm
tested
trying to
you.
sound tough. You think so? That's funny. Oh yeah. Domingo wants to know if he can come on. It's up to you.
Domingo is back. We were talking about violence. It's just going to be.
I mean, the thing is, like, you're my boy, Doovid. I'll back you. So it's totally up to you. And I'm indifferent. Like, I'm okay
Your
with
back's
it.
no back. It's like Jennifer may be smart. She might do the math for me, but like just from this conversation, like her back is no back. She would not be part of my squad in that sense. Like if I was expecting violence, I would not bring Jennifer with me. God forbid. And that's what I'm deciphering from this conversation.
Well, I think we got to that earlier when you said you would rebel on general principle. You perhaps weren't crazy about the principle of order.
Well, and I was saying, like, I've done security for years. Like, I've worked in officially security for years. I've done security for local synagogues and even to events here in Metro Detroit. And I was saying, like no, like your help would be no help. And just I mean, the philosophical, like we mean imposing order or something like that. And so, like, no, you would
don't believe
you would cause conflict, and probably like whatever you thought would be preparatory to avoid conflict probably wouldn't work.
That's really funny. Just make me wonder what it's like at my old jobs now that I'm gone.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid, like I did concerts, people don't know what's
It's
entailed.
It's comforting to know that somebody's going to be there to invoke the will of the sovereign wisely, so people yield to it ultra quick. They just need to demonstrate it a couple times and say, "Look, I know you're in a tough situation. Here's the best way, and let's do that." And people yearn for acknowledgement, and if you acknowledge properly, accurately, don't overstate expertise, of course.
I mean, I remember
things delegated to you.
Lead singer of one of my bands got beat the hell out of and put in the hospital, and like I recommended against it. Like I saw it was going to happen. He didn't listen to me. My partner got beat right in front of me, and like I didn't want to fight with the bouncer over something stupid. And then they went out that night. They got beat the hell out of, put in the hospital, and like I had to go to the hospital for him, and visit him in the hospital. But I mean, it's their own stupidity largely. They got beat up by their own security.
Sorry.
They got beat up by the person who was being paid by our bouncer, who we paid, and largely for acting like Jennifer's acting, and dumb behavior. I mean, the gangster rapper, he was pretty smart. He was a pretty good chess player, also, and like he got in a lot of fights. Even I mean, I would say. Deshaun's been in a lot of fights. I said, like a lot of people I know have been in a lot of fights. I haven't been in that many fights, but even at the downtown synagogue, like we had to bounce people. We got like Marines there. I mean, say if you have an intimidation factor, so we got.
Yeah, but haven't you ever heard of a little thing called dirty look?
Well, of course.
So that's how I solve those problems.
Well, and so that's just
little
your fantasy.
Thing I like to call
your
dirty
fantasy,
look.
your fantasy world. So you in your own mind.
Yes, my fantasy world, which just happens to coincide
as opposed to the person who's actually doing security, who's actually paying people, who actually has to deal with the police in the hospital or whatever afterwards, and just some stupid woman who thinks she gave someone a dirty look. And saying like, no, I'm saying like that you actually have to hire bouncers. If someone gets injured, you actually have to go visit them in the hospital and make sure that they're okay, paying medical bills. If someone gets arrested, you have to actually go to court and go to the police station, and if someone hurts your guy and you have to, you attempt to take legal action against them.
Well, you hit on exactly what it is any slight of honor is no slight of honor unaccounted for. I don't want to say unretaliated because that implies violence, and I don't condone violence, but everything is noted, especially with regards to diminishing people's honors publicly that I care about. I won't stand for it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I told memes, I mentioned this many times, is thought, speech, action. So if you're looking at the security perspective, you're only concerned with violence. And you could look for the escalation of violence, which is usually related to talking. But saying like, no, security's.
Can you just imagine like two guys are about to start fighting, and I give one of them the fucking evilest eye you ever imagine, and I just stare his ass down and say, "Fucking break it up right now." You don't think they'd stop, even though I didn't lay a hand on him?
No, I don't think so. I think that, God forbid, like.
Oh, ye have little faith.
You're not the only
It
stupid
hurts me,
woman
Doovid.
I've heard say that, but.
Oh, really? You've heard women say this before?
Most stupid women think like that. I'm saying, like, God forbid.
I don't think most women think like that. I don't think most women think about mediating conflict. No.
I mean, they
perhaps on certain levels, but not on this level. No.
Their misassessment of their control of the situation is usually inaccurate.
Well, you're the one who's misassessing it, there, my friend.
I'm saying if violence broke out, that no, you would basically it would be like Congress. You would hide under your seat or run. Saying that your thought that you had control of the situation would very quickly.
Obviously, I'm not going to go into a situation where I don't have that control. I'm not going to go into a situation where I don't have that control. I acknowledge what you're saying. You're right.
And then it wouldn't do anything. And then either you would run or you would hide, or bad things would happen to you.
There's no need to weave a straw dinosaur. I never said I was cruising for a bruising. I'm flat out saying it's the opposite. It just so happened that one time it came to blows. One time in all that time, that's not bad.
Well, I mean, if you accept, like Rabbi Wilson, the principle that largely he told me I was in Jerusalem, and God forbid I was driving him to the Western Wall, and someone was killed in Jerusalem that night, a Jew arguing in the Old City with an Arab, and he got stabbed to death. And actually, someone thought it was me. I remember I went to the.
That did the stabbing or got stabbed?
That got stabbed.
Oh dear.
And but the rabbi's assistant was telling him that in the morning, and he switched to English because the rabbi usually spoke in Yiddish, but he switched to English to say this. No, maybe he said in Yiddish. I forget. And he said, bad things usually only happen to people when they're where they don't belong, which is generally, I heard that when I was young in a situation of, like a senior rabbi in Israel in a dangerous place. And I accepted that, and I've axiomatically accepted that my whole life. And generally, I think that it's true that bad things only happen to people when they're where they don't belong. Sometimes you belong in a dangerous situation, and even with intelligence. Okay, like I promoted parties, I didn't get in any fights. I saw fights. We had security. There were fights, but like none of it happened to me. And it generally happened to people who, so to say, were where they didn't belong. They were trying to do something that wasn't appropriate to the circumstance, and that caused the violence. But at the point, like if you're like your evil eye, you're looking like that you want to de-escalate or think that you could just look at the situation and control it. Like no,
it's more than looking, but I mean,
you could will, like I will you to control your behavior. It's like
wow, it can take a little bit of time, can it? But if you don't believe,
you have psychic powers. Doovid doesn't believe that you could just look and will to control someone's behavior.
Even if I grant that I have psychic powers, it wouldn't be sufficient to only employ psychic powers to my end. So Domingo's messaged me about 7 times now. Can you give an answer one way or the other? I'm completely indifferent. My only concern is your comfort.
Oh no, I don't really want to talk to him. I mean, if
all right.
He's your buddy or something like that.
No.
No, I mean, this is like your typical woman strategy. Like you're losing the argument, so you want to bring on someone to beat me up. It's like, Doovid won the argument, so I'm going to bring on Domingo to beat me up.
I took on.
You don't even know.
people on a single Discord thing, and I felt so invigorated. It was like, bring them on. And then at the end, the girl was like, "You're being mean," and I was like, if that's true, and she accused me of gaslighting, that it's like I single-handedly gaslighted 5 people. You're gonna admit that in public? Hello. I have
Well,
some
that's why,
dignity.
God forbid, when I was worried about future Week in Review, is like, does Jennifer enjoy being mean to people?
No. That's why I'm so good at it, to get it out of the way quickly.
And then like the rabbi's axiom that bad things only happen to people when they don't belong. Are you purposely going to places where you don't belong in order to cause bad things to happen?
Well, whether I belong on T-Jumps is largely a matter of the people on T-Jumps, so we'll have to see how that goes. Whether I belong anywhere else is, I guess, is the same story. So yeah, Dom, you can't come on. I'm sorry. He's definitely not a me goon, but
But
yeah, this is my whole point. Is I'm not trying to fuel conflict, and there's the evidence for it. Is I'm not bringing him on to have the conflict. I'm just saying, there you go. I don't want it.
Well, I'm saying it's my show. Like, I'm saying you could stream with Domingo every night of the week. You could marry Domingo. Like, it doesn't bother me. But okay, it's my show. I don't really like. I'm trying to remember like the last few times I talked to him. Like, he doesn't even like me.
He doesn't like me either. The last time we talked was absolutely horrible and insulting. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just so dang impartial.
Or is that bad karma? As we could see by this conversation.
Well, do we have any other topics we want to go into?
Even the Talmud says, like you said, that being ugly is preferable for wisdom. The Talmud says, interesting about what is a beautiful woman, and the Talmud says that a beautiful woman has been the cause of many a man's death, like as definitionally what makes a woman beautiful. And so the Talmud throws in the karmatic statement, what makes her beautiful is that she's been the cause of many a man's death.
So that would mean there's not too many beautiful women around, because not too many women have caused men's death in the modern day.
Well, no, I'm saying that. I mean, not that saying the woman is a killer or something, but I'm saying no, it's the woman who caused the man's death. So most conflict is caused by women. And so if you're in the bar or the club, or the event that in the fight occurs, the fight really happened over the woman, or the conflict. Even as I'm politically provoked, I was talking about the increase in gun violence and just conflicts being escalated to people.
Look at the last comment in the chat, please.
But you're saying that no, I'm saying that the ultimate cause of most conflict is women.
Look at the comment in the chat.
It doesn't mean like directly. So it's saying like you give the look, and saying like no, you did give that look, and you're beautiful, and you're beautiful because you did give that look, and it caused that man's death. And that's what it means for you to be beautiful, is that you did give that look, and it did cause that man's death.
Domingo says he was coming. He wanted to come on to agree with you. Now, whether you think he's lying or not, just wanted to let you know that he did say that.
Or yeah, I don't see the conversation going anywhere.
Although, for what it's worth, I do believe him that he would definitely take an opportunity to go against what I was saying. Yeah, perhaps even if it meant agreeing with you.
No, I mean, but because he would argue with you and maybe saying like, no, it would just be the demonstration of it being you that causes conflict.
Or Domingo.
Well, I'm saying that you right now are trying to resolve this, save face by me by bringing in Domingo to do your fight for you.
Oh, is that what you think? That seems like a rather paranoid or neurotic fixation, an incredibly narcissistic one at that.
That's how women function generally.
Oh, so you're an expert on women?
Well, psychology. And so if your girlfriend calls her ex-boyfriend or like her friend that's good at fighting or something, like you're having a dispute, and then all of a sudden, like she's on the phone with her ex-boyfriend, or like her buddy that's really tough or something. The messaging's pretty clear. That's generally how women function. You're like you
So
gotta
you're
bring
saying
them.
that me asking to bring on Dom right now is like I was liking my ex's pictures on Facebook or some shit?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're trying to recruit a goon squad on the spot, and like I was
That is
assuming that-
literally heartbreaking that you think that. But he says yeah. So what can you not read, dude? Because he's saying now he didn't know it was your show. What is the fifth word in the title, though? That should be self-evident.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basic psychology.
I guess I'm just not that cynical. But I acknowledge, there is a value to cynicism. It is accurate most of the time.
Well, I mean, you're blind to your own behavior, really, and
I am just projecting, I guess, because I like the conflict. If it's a debate, but that's the thing about him, is that he's not a really good faith debater. So that's why I didn't want to have him on. But I was saying, if you wanted to, I would be cool with it. That's all. But you don't want, so stop trying to make it into something that's not.
yeah, no, I mean, God forbid, it's like the sign that weekend review is going nowhere. Like I'd rather be reaching out to like even Quibbles or something like that. Like using weekend review to become friendly with him, or
Who's
like
Quibble?
these small time that Jew I was arguing with on Politically Provoked.
So what would be the best case scenario for how that would go if he came on the show, so that we can hash it out beforehand?
Well, just probably to talk streaming, like just a friendly interview conversation. I mean, like Politically Provoked also. So, I mean, it's confrontational because the host was a woman. That I mean, it was because of Brittany that there was confrontation in the first place. If it was all men, it wouldn't have been confrontational in the first place. It was only because it was hosted by a woman. So it could be that it wouldn't work like that. But I mean, just be to like.
I'm reminded
okay,
of the time you were trolling Aaron with an idol of Moses, I think it was. Was there any woman on that stream? Because that seemed pretty dang trolly.
It was on Babs. I don't remember if that was. Not sure. I mean, you have to ask Bab for the replay of that one.
But I mean, you're going a bit far to say there's only conflict on the stream because there's a woman on there. Like,
I mean,
you're looking at
even if
pissing
there
off
was
an entirely different demographic now.
I mean, the majority of conflict is caused by women, and it's all conflict is caused by women, but majority of conflict is caused by women.
Sure.
And it's like even the confrontational nature of the conversation, was kind of sparring to probably impress Brittany or something like that. And it's like just to have an old school micro streamer conversation. Who are you? Why are you going? What do you plan on doing? What are your thoughts? What you're streaming, who you're talking to, who you're listening to, as opposed to like a T-jump, Politically Provoked modern day debate. Like fight for the crowd, fight in front of the woman in hope that she chooses you over the other guy. And I mean, maybe that with a female co-host, that's impossible to do it like that. To just have a normal, just like Jewish geography, like who are you, where are you from, what do you plan on doing, what do we agree about that we could work together in the future, and really have that type conversation with anybody. But it's probably like the Teach server, where it's more like reality TV, Squid Game type stuff, where there could only be one, and if we're just gonna have you fight.
Isn't that Highlander? Not sorry.
Well, the expression "there can only be one" was in the Highlander, but that's the all reality TV in the Squid Game. Come down to like there can only be one, and even if you're friendly now, at the end you're gonna have to go up against your friend because there can only be one winner. And women, the nature of just reproductive biology is that's why women cause conflict.
Yeah, maybe there's like a two-side thing to it, that the men are the active force and the women are the passive force in the conflict. It's a general symphony of conflict.
Well, no. So if there's, like I said, like if you're on the construction site or you're at the restaurant and or the stock office, and there's two people that can't get along with each other, and it's all men, and you say fight it out and then get back to work, as opposed to a woman, you're saying only one of the men is going
Oh
to
no, that's easy. You just figure out who's right and who's wrong by asserting the sovereign will. It's easy. You just say, "Oh, what happened? Okay, you're in the wrong."
I'm saying
End of it.
that's the feminine. Just saying only one person's going to be able to impregnate you, as opposed to a fight at work where the goal is to get back to work. So if you have to, you're saying like you guys can't focus on your work because there's conflict between you, so just fight it out and then get back to work, as opposed to the fight to who's going to impregnate you, and then the loser has to go away because only one person's going to be able to impregnate you. So it's a more divisive fight where the loser has to go away, as opposed to squash the conflict and then get back to work. And so by a woman, there could only be one because you can only be impregnated by one person, and then the loser has to go away, as opposed
When
to
there's a conflict of property rights, there can be only one claimant who actually gets what they want, too. So it's not so much kumbaya; it's more like making a judgment. And if nobody can disagree with your judgment because your judgment's so dang good, then you're set.
The case where you'd have a dispute in property is quite rare. So like like if it's a house, there's a deed, there's a name on it. If there's a piece of property, but yeah, I mean there could be dispute over property like that, and it's definitive. But even property is replaceable. I mean, say that if it's the computer, if it's a car, it has
not
a value.
The way I view property, I'm afraid.
It has a value.
There's no
and the value could be split or given, so someone could get, as opposed to it's like a woman. The only one person could impregnate the woman, and you could always find another woman, but it's not like a car or something where I got my Jeep, and I could just get a different Jeep, or I got my Dell, I could get a different Dell. So the fight over women is of a different nature. What I say, there could only be one winner. In a fight over a woman, there could only be one winner, and there is no compromise besides one person walking away, and because there could only be one.
No, and
the fight over property isn't necessarily necessarily.
I can respect somebody as a debater, and somebody else as a debater. There's no zero sum in that. I can teach one person or two people or three people knowledge, and there's no zero sum in that. So it's not really the same principle. Nobody's fighting over my ovaries. It's ridiculous.
No, but that is what they're fighting over, and so the point you don't realize that is why you increase conflict, because you don't act like a man, and in your own mind,
perhaps I act like a man.
You're in a manosphere, and so you're trying to so to say imitate the behavior of men, but as a woman you can't imitate the behavior of men, and the male reaction to you will be as a woman.
Okie dokie. What if they're strong? What if they lean heavily on meritocracy?
Well, that could be also. I mean, I lean heavily on meritocracy.
As in deserving it due to feats of mastery?
Of accomplishment, recognizable accomplishment.
Right.
As opposed to some sort of fantasy, like fantasy claim of accomplishment that isn't melted out in facts.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even imagine fighting Crown or reason, let alone anybody else. The fact that that's being alleged as the motive is borderline kook town. Borderline kook town. But anyway.
mean, it's basic animal human psychology. I just even read multiple books on evolutionary psychology. It's basic evolutionary
Yeah, it is
psychology.
getting fucking weird, Mark. I agree. It is getting fucking weird. It's like you're literally saying, oh, the only motivation anyone could ever have is shitting out kids. Is that your argument?
No, so that's why I said that the conflict over women is more zero sum because there can only be one man who can impregnate her.
Implying that's all she's good for.
No, I didn't say implying that. I just saying that the fight over a woman is by definition zero sum. Most fights are not zero sum, and there's a greater picture. So it's like you're here to work, you get paid or something. Why are you fighting? What are you fighting about? Or like even if you don't like each other, just do the work and get it done, and just don't like each other and still do a good job and do the work, as opposed to the fight over women is by definition zero sum. There can only be one winner.
I'm married.
Good for you.
So how
But
can
I
they
say
be fighting over me if I'm married?
Well, that's a contract, so that
Some kind of
people
old.
may or may not recognize them. Like if you went to a bar or a club, it's likely that there would be at least a few people there, depending on the club, maybe even quite a few people there that wouldn't care, and God forbid would be happy to beat up your husband over some sort of sexual conquest. I'm saying, like, God forbid. I live in Manhattan many years. I think people don't respect the oath and vow of marriage, and yes, like if you went to the wrong place, the wrong party with your husband, there might be some dude who would even want to prove himself by fighting your husband.
Someone in the chat's asking if you're signaling something.
No, I'm not signaling that. I'm saying, like, I'm a man who respects, and saying, God forbid, bad things only happen to people when they're in the wrong place. If that was, like, I wouldn't be streaming with you. I have no conflict with your husband. But I mean, that is animal psychology, and that is the nature of human psychology. It's factual.
So humans are animals.
Well, yeah. And we have a mind that controls the body, but the essential motivation factor behind the body is animalistic.
Okay.
I mean, even JF was saying that marriage tends to come with religion, that you can't give an evolutionary argument for marriage.
Sure you can. You can say that society will implode because of hypergamy competition, and it will be deleterious to continuity, and therefore there should be some type of, I
Yeah,
want to say sexual communism, but I do think there's a lot to be said for,
I'm saying man
arranged
needed
marriage.
religion. Man needed religion in order to believe in the sanctity of marriage. The belief in the sanctity of marriage derives from religion. So he said man evolved religion in order to create structure, and the religion is false, but the structure is dependent upon these false beliefs, and so one of them is the sanctity of marriage. Marriage is a religious act that cannot be derived from natural law.
Even though I literally just derived it as hypergamy being undermining
Just to give utilitarian benefits of it. You didn't derive it. You just said it is.
All you have to do is prove a link to undermining the continuity of civilization, and
you can't create
wars
an
do that.
institution just because it's beneficial. Like a sacramental institution based on utility is, I know you need religion to make it sacramental, because at the end of the day, God forbid, if someone cheats on their husband, cheats on their wife, that if there is no karma, there is no God to strike it down. Like you could sin and get away with it.
In this context, all that karma means is that the cheating spices, they're more likely to cheat in the future. Okay,
you need a God factor.
That's all that means.
Saying like you can't kill someone and get away with it, but like you can cheat on your spouse and get away with it.
But then you have bad karma because you're a person who cheats, meaning it's more likely you're going to cheat in the future, creating a situation of cheating, undermining social trust, undermining civilizational stability. Boom.
But from evolutionary is not cheating. I mean, it's cheating in the sense maybe
civilizational
someone gave their
stability.
word.
We're not monkeys.
But it's saying that you agreed upon a sacrament of religion, and if the religious sacrament was false in the first place, being bound to that religious sacrament wasn't binding in the first place.
What? What?
The institute of marriage derives from the Bible. I mean, there might be other historic sources, but the institute of marriage derives from the Bible and religion, and is a remnant of previous eras when society was religious, and that we still have the institution is historic. That if we always believed in evolution, it's very unlikely or even impossible that we would have came up with this sacrament institution of marriage. As it was commanded by God, and it was followed by people because they believed in a religious system and a God that has and karma that enforces bad things. That the woman who cheats on her husband, and she might be able to get away with it, but no, there's God, and God, even in the Bible, it has some sort of fantastical sota. There's a whole book of the Talmud about the woman who's secluded with a man, and then she has to, against warning, and she has to go through this ceremony to prove that she didn't have relations with him. And it's and biblically, it's miraculous. It's like a test of that God will prove that she didn't cheat on him. Like you got to write on something or scrub some powder, and she got to drink it, or like float in the water. But basically, the Bible says that there's going to be this miraculous test to be able to tell whether the woman was faithful or not, and that's how you're going to decide it. But we're saying in a karmatic society, saying no, there is no way to tell if the woman cheated, and the only witness is the man, and they say it didn't happen. There's no, it's like a tree fell in the forest and no one heard it. There is no evidence, and so you need some sort of higher religious system. Say there's a God who runs the world, and the truth will be revealed because God designed it that way. And that's really why the institution of marriage has died out in the West, is one of the advances of the disease of atheism, that marriage doesn't really make sense in a secular society. Even like gay marriage and these other things, it's largely for the tax benefits that people derive tax benefits and various things from a marriage status, and being gay marriage or something like that. The main issue isn't necessarily societal acceptance; it's the government protective status or tax benefits to the people that have that status recognized.
Interesting conjecture. I'm inclined to agree. Seems highly reasonable.
I even said that an affair is something that only death could atone for. When I was mentioning Yom Kippur and the atonement, that someone has relations, extramarital relations, that Yom Kippur can't atone for it, only death can, because it's some sort of permanent rapture to the physical body. And as long as the person's body is alive, that sin will be connected to the body, and only the decay, the eating by worms and maggots of the flesh will be able to atone for that sin. But I said, no, generally marriage needs this religious factor, that there's some sort of God that's going to oversee and make sure that you can't sin and get away with it. Because, generally in a godless world, well, of course you could sin and get away with it. And, saying the country
You
girl with the
can't
high,
sin and
high
get away
IQ,
with it.
saying certainly it doesn't matter that you're married. If you go to a bar or a club,
God.
people aren't going to care that you're married. And it's okay, bad things usually happen to people when they're where they don't belong. Why would you want to go to one place like that anyways?
I wasn't always married. And why would I want to go to a club? To have a dance off with people for fun?
Well, I mean, but you're single and you want to participate in some sort of mating ritual.
Oh no, God, no! I never met anybody at the bar. That's degenerate.
I mean,
Like
that's
you.
really what it was. I'm saying like public dancing is a mating
I don't think
ritual.
I ever met. Yeah, I know for a fact I never met any SO I ever had at a bar. So no, I just went with the posse and we danced and we got drunk and we
I mean,
went
you
home.
took low birth. You just did what other people were doing.
Oh no, it was
You didn't
always
know.
my idea because I
You
love
didn't
going
know.
to
I mean,
dance.
because you didn't know any better. You took low birth, and
Oh
so you
sure,
just
yeah.
did what you did the best of what you could do with your knowledge.
Sure. Someone in the chat wants to pay you $500, but I'm not sure what it's for. Oh, they want to crash on your couch.
Airbnb. Like, no, Doovid does not have Airbnb. You could do
You
couches
have
on.
a roommate though, right?
Well, yeah, no reason for me to talk about my personal situation.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, dance off. I didn't have that many dance offs. I got challenged to a dance off, but it's like I ain't challenged anybody to a dance off because it's like with the debates. It's like you're losing that dance off, right? So obviously, it's rude to just shit up somebody's bar experience. But if somebody, Derek Zoolanders you or whatever, you remember it's a walk off, or whatever. If that happens, then it's like, yeah, again, it's like a challenge to a debate. You just got to go do it.
Okay, let's cap this at 3 hours. So, you have anything else you want to say? It's like I'm kind of down on the direction of week in review. Like I'd rather it be week in review than kind of just like pointless bickering, or advancing ideas, or if you actually have advancements to review. So we basically did that in the first hour.
Sure.
And
Thanks for joining, and I had a lot of fun, and I guess I like the bickering, but I'm sorry to impose it on you. And thanks for
okay,
the
great.
awesome contributions to the show. And you didn't think this show was terrible, did you? I think you honestly got to stop complaining about it because it's like, yeah, it's not great, whatever it is. Like, look at what Amy Newman does. That show is perfect in terms of promo. It's just so darn peppy about the whole thing. Neither of us is peppy about the show. And you're flat out down on the show. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have in mind what I'd like to do with the show, and it's not.
And people are
happening.
going to, well, okay, so.
And then even what I find to be beneficial about the show, like
the miscommunications you're causing by failing to tell people that I require my authority not to be pissed all over on a stream.
Yeah, but so that's basically impossible. So no one wants to come on the stream.
Oh, it's impossible for somebody not to piss on my authority. Then maybe we should talk about why that is. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, just because I don't think I'm going to be able to get them on the show and to establish you as some sort of authority that they should listen to.
You don't have to. Just say, don't deny Jen's authority. That's all you have to say, literally. And there won't be a conflict. But I don't want people coming on my show to disagree with me and say, no, you're just wrong because da, 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 da. You're going to bring out the beast if you do that. And you're not prefacing it with them. You're not prefacing that to them. You're just transferring your own opinion. That's
irrelevant. Like,
it's largely irrelevant.
Just to meet people in advanced streaming and ideas, and I'm not necessarily here to help you establish your authority. So
I never said that.
Advance your ideas.
There's a difference between accepting authority and not denying.
Oh, well, maybe you'll figure that out, and you'd be like Luke or something, and write some sort of code for, like the nobody that wants to come on, only Domingo.
Let's just please not be down on the show in the future, okay? Let's be positive about the show. Yay, show, okay? I'm not quite at Amy Newman levels of fabulousness yet, but someday, maybe, I can get there. Anyway, thanks. I'll give a dumbass a shot, because apparently I'm a masochist. So thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Okay, well, you want to make a separate stream for him?
No, I'm just going to kick him off if he gets out of line even once.
I mean, God forbid, it's like,
you want me to make another stream. You don't want him on the same stream as you.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like pretty hardcore anti-Semite or something. Like I don't want him on my show.
Okay.
I don't mind. I don't want to conflict with them, but just
I have
God
no
forbid.
idea what you want, to be honest. So I've got nothing to say to the guy, to
You
be
don't even know,
honest.
but you don't even know who he is.
That's true.
So like, no, I don't think it's going to advance our streams for you to bring him on.
Yeah, no problem. Nicholas agrees to stay positive, so let's all try to do that. Me included. Sometimes I can be grumpy, it's on me as well. So positivity. Until next
Okay.
time.
So have a good week.
You too. All right, everyone. So, your feedback would be helpful. Whatever opinions. I don't think anyone's set to come on. I can send you the link. But I don't think anyone's planning on coming on right now. There we go. Nice to see everyone in the chat. So, I don't know. Ooh, submitted. Yeah, I was just thinking about how fun it would be to have commentary on debates that sounded just like those Voxer punchy thingies. Yeah, but John, I mean, whatever. You don't have to, emulate free attribute. And did you miss much? Nah, just the same as usual. And me trying to figure out how to get to the point of wrapping up the show before it turns into complaining, because it's like, yeah, it's the complaining that's making people not want to come on. Obviously, my crankiness isn't helping, but like, I have to defend the honor of tradition. And when someone says, yeah, the supreme ultimate God is personal, it's like, I don't want to say those are fighting words, but those are words that you're uttering in a very careless way. So that's, should we be careless with our words? Because that would appear to be step one on a many-step path to eventual words not meaning anything. And then it's like, why talk? Oh, Domingo. Yeah, that's who he's talking about. Yeah, I'm trying to do the same old, same old. It's just not endorse bad behavior. But the bad behavior is just sort of getting worse, and I'm sort of at a loss for how to deal with it, right? So anyway. And maybe it's run its course, whatever, and it'll just, be time to do something else with the channel. So I'm all about utility on some level, as well as I guess interesting things. Anyway, so if you're gonna come on, I did send you the link. So if you want to come on, come on. But if you don't come on like in the next couple of minutes, I'm gonna wrap this up. So everyone's just being so dang coy. I understand, who wants to put a conversation in public, because all it could possibly be would be a non-benefit to put information about oneself out there publicly. That's why you don't do that. You just talk about ideas, right? That's why there's no real point to doing this stuff unless you have a corpus of ideas to talk about, or you can come on and learn about how to, develop ideas, whatever. But that requires, at least on some level, accepting the premise of authority, and people just aren't at that point right now. They're at the point of, I really want to fight. It's not for me to say that that's not something that people should be entitled to do, but it's also not like I don't owe people to be in the audience to that behavior. All right. Well, thanks everyone for showing up, and please give your, feedback in the comments about what you want to see on the show, what would be a good direction, or whatever. If you think the show is just horrible and should just be wrapped up forever, whoops, just kidding. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, so everyone's always a couple books away from coming on to discuss things. It's like it doesn't work like that. You can read 10 million libraries and still you'd not be able to, because it's a oral tradition. It only works when you practice it. The longer you don't practice it, the worse it gets, right? It's like people who say they want to wait till they get in good shape before they go to the gym. Literally heard people say that to me before, and it's just like, just play that back slowly. Talk to everyone next week, if not sooner.
That's just so to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck goddamn logic?
they control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing with Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walked through like the technology.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner herself cult prestige by associating